Chapter 1989. Naturally, even if Yang Wen did not kill Duan Lingtian now, it did not mean he would not kill Duan Lingtian in the future. The reason he did not kill Duan Lingtian now was because he was afraid of Zoroastrianism. In the future, as long as he had the chance, he would definitely kill Duan Lingtian to avenge his younger brother, Yang Wu. What's senior brother Yang Wen doing? It seems like he's waiting for Duan Lingtian to come out. At the same time, Yang Wen's actions had attracted the attention of many Saint Lan disciples. They knew Yang Wen had come for the new disciple, Duan Lingtian. However, they could tell Yang Wen was not here to have a heart-to-heart talk with Duan Lingtian. This could be seen from his aggressive manner. At this moment, the Saint Lan disciples present on the scene were certain Yang Wen did not come with good intentions. There's enmity between Duan Lingtian and senior brother Yang Wen? I've never heard of it before. I've never heard of it before as well. Moreover, one of them was in the Saint Land while the other was in the Four Symbols Sanctums. They don't seem to have any interactions, right? What's going on? Many Saint Land disciples were puzzled when they saw Yang Wen had come with ill intentions. Confusion could be seen in their eyes. Really? All of you don't know there's enmity between senior brother Yang Wen and Duan Lingtian? At this moment, a Saint Lan disciple asked in surprise. It was as though he had heard something shocking. What? You know about it? The group of Saint Lan disciples immediately shifted their attention to this Saint Lan disciple. Do all of you still remember how Duan Lingtian became enemies with the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder, Lian, when he first arrived at the Black Turtle Sanctum of Zoroastrianism? The Saint Lan disciple kept them in suspense as he asked this question. Of course, as soon as the Saint Lan disciple finished speaking, another Saint Lan disciple nodded and said, "It's because Duan Lingtian killed the son of Elder Lian's best friend." The other Saint Lan disciples nodded as well. They had heard of this matter before. For this reason, they admired Duan Lingtian very much. After all, no one would dare to openly go against a Silver Flame Elder of Zoroastrianism when they had just joined Zoroastrianism. Since all of you know about this matter, then do all of you know who Elder Lian's best friend is? The first disciple asked again. Who? Don't keep me guessing. Tell me who it is. Exactly. Do you believe that we will beat you up if you continue to keep us in suspense? Many of the Holy Land's disciples were enraged when they saw the Holy Land's disciple trying to keep them in suspense again. All of them glared at him, as though they would beat him up if he dared to keep them in suspense again. Although the other Holy Land's disciples didn't do the same, their gazes towards this Holy Land's disciple were filled with hostility. It's Yang Chong. At this moment, another Holy Land disciple muttered to himself for a moment before exclaiming in surprise. It was obvious that he had just remembered. Yang Chong. I remember now. It's Yang Chong. I remember now. The person Duan Lingtian killed that day was Yang Wu, the son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect. When the first Holy Land's disciple spoke, another two Holy Land's disciples finally realized what was going on. Don't tell me senior brother Yang Wen is related to Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect? At the same time, the Holy Land's disciples present on the scene began to speculate. At the same time, most of the Holy Land's disciples shifted their attention to the Holy Land's disciple who liked to keep them in suspense. All of them wanted to get an answer from him. Since this Holy Land's disciple had angered everyone earlier, he did not dare to go overboard this time. He said bluntly, "Senior brother Yang Wen is the eldest son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect. As for Yang Wu who was killed by Duan Lingtian, he's senior brother Yang Wen's younger brother." Whoosh! As soon as the Holy Land's disciple finished speaking, the entire place fell silent. However, a commotion broke out again in the next moment. Senior brother Yang Wen is the son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect? Heavens! There's such a thing. I've never heard of it before. Me too. I've never heard of it before. After learning that the true disciple of their Zoroastrianism Holy Land, Yang Wen, was actually the son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect, the Saint Lan's disciples present on the scene were shocked. In fact, They had never heard of Yang Wen being the son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect before this. Senior brother Yang Wen really hid his identity well. He's actually the son of the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect. In the past, I've only heard that senior brother Yang Wen is very arrogant. However, I've finally seen it for myself now. To think that senior brother Yang Wen is so arrogant that he's unwilling to use his father's name to intimidate others. Many Holy Land's disciples were filled with emotions when they learned of Yang Wen's identity. If that's the case, then it's easy to explain why senior brother Yang Wen targeted Duan Lingtian. After all, Duan Lingtian killed his younger brother. It'd be strange if he's willing to let the matter rest. That's right. Perhaps senior brother Yang Wen doesn't dare to kill Duan Lingtian or cripple him because of the sect's rules. However, he still dares to torture Duan Lingtian. After all, it's allowed by the sect's rules. Then, doesn't this mean Duan Lingtian is going to be in trouble? Of course. Although he's quite strong and has few opponents below the Saint Celestial stage, his strength is nothing compared to senior brother Yang Wen, who's at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage. That's right. There's a huge gap between the Saint Celestial stage and the quintessential Saint stage. Duan Lingtian's strength is no match for senior brother Yang Wen. It seems like even if Duan Lingtian doesn't die or become crippled, he's going to lose a layer of skin. After learning about Yang Wen's identity, the group of Saint Land disciples was no longer surprised by Yang Wen's hostility toward Duan Lingtian. Instead, they began to sympathize with Duan Lingtian. Although they had heard that Duan Lingtian's strength was very close to the Saint Celestial stage, it was still not close to the Saint Celestial stage. However, even if he was very close to the Saint Celestial stage, he was still not at the Saint Celestial stage. Due to this reason, in their opinion, it was impossible for Duan Lingtian to be a match for Yang Wen. He was destined to be tortured by Yang Wen. Due to the good soundproofing of the stone house behind the Saint Land disciples' residence, Duan Lingtian, who was in the fourth level of the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda, did not notice anything at all. He did not know there was a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse waiting for him outside. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was standing in the air of the fourth level of the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda. He was as straight as a javelin. Duan Lingtian stood there motionlessly like a statue. No one knew what he was doing. Time continued to pass by. A day went by. 2 days went by. After a month had passed, Duan Lingtian finally made a move. When Duan Lingtian raised his hand, a simple and unadorned 3-foot-long sword appeared in his hand. It was the Celestial Supreme Treasure, the Jasper Celestial Sword. At first glance, the Jasper Celestial Sword looked like an extremely ordinary sword. Whoosh! However, when Duan Lingtian held it in his hand and swung it, it emitted a terrifying aura, as though it could destroy heaven and earth. A semi-transparent sword energy flashed around the Jasper Celestial Sword, as it emitted an oppressive aura. With the sword in my heart, the shadow of the sword follows my heart. Controlling the sword with my heart, the heart of the sword is illuminated, the heart and sword become one. At some point, Duan Lingtian began to mutter to himself without opening his eyes. No one knew who he was talking to. He kept repeating the names of the 5 stages of the sovereign heart, sword, as though he did not know the meaning of exhaustion. He did not stop for a long time. Time continued to pass by. Another month had passed. After swinging the Jasper Celestial Sword once a month ago, Duan Lingtian, who had not made a move since then, began to make a move again. A month ago, he swung the Jasper Celestial Sword horizontally. Whoosh! However, this time, he swung the Jasper Celestial Sword vertically, and did not make a move after that. In just a blink of an eye, another month had passed. However, this time, Duan Lingtian still did not make a move. He stood there with the Jasper Celestial Sword in his hand, as though he was a statue of a sword cultivator. What a powerful sword chi! Unknowingly, Elder Hua's figure appeared on the 4th level of the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda. His eyes landed on Duan Lingtian, who was hovering in the air with the sword in his hand. His eyes narrowed as shock filled his face. Duan Lingtian stood there with the sword in his hand, and looked ordinary. However, Hualao could clearly sense that the sword qi emanating from Duan Lingtian was extremely powerful. It was so dense that it seemed as though it could tear through everything. However, if one looked closely, they would be able to see that the air around Duan Lingtian's body was being divided into many parts. It was so dense that it seemed as though it was being affected by thousands of invisible forces. He's just one step away. I hope he can succeed. Once he takes this step, his achievement in the Sovereign Heart Sword is enough to reach the peak of offensive martial arts in this mundane realm. It's even stronger than most of the top offensive martial arts in this mundane realm. Hualao mumbled to himself. Then, he disappeared from the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. It was as though he had never appeared. After Hualao left, the air around Duan Lingtian's body was further divided. On the 10th day, the air around Duan Lingtian's body was divided into thin threads. It was as though it was being cut into layers by an invisible force. Using the heart to wield the sword. I see. All of a sudden, Duan Lingtian opened his eyes that were as bright as the stars. The gaze in his eyes was like a sword gleam. At the same time, the air around Duan Lingtian's body that was divided began to gather again. It was no longer affected by the invisible force. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian let go of his hands. At the same time, the Jasper Celestial Sword in his hand turned into a sword ray and shot out. Its speed became faster and faster. In the end, it disappeared into the air as though it had become one with the air. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. However, when Duan Lingtian's Jasper Celestial Sword disappeared into the air, the sound of the sword whistling did not stop. It continued to resound in the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. After about 15 minutes, the sound of the sword whistling finally stopped. Chapter 1990. It's exactly 100 days. As Duan Lingtian put the Jasper Celestial Sword away, he muttered to himself for a moment before his eyes lit up. He recalled the time he spent comprehending the 3rd stage of the Sovereign Heart Sword, the sword wielding the heart. After all, he was not in closed-door cultivation. For this reason, Duan Lingtian had a sense of time. 100 days in the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda is equivalent to only 10 days outside. As Duan Lingtian muttered to himself, he raised his hand, and a crystal card appeared in his other hand. It was the crystal card he had obtained from the Saint Land's new disciple registration office. I wonder what I can exchange the contribution points in this crystal card for? I'll go to the central square to have a look. If there's anything I need, I'll see if there's any way I can earn contribution points. After he inserted the Sun Saint energy into the crystal card in his hand, it showed that he still had 100 contribution points. The 100 contribution points could be obtained by any 4 symbols sanctum's disciple who entered the Saint Land and became a Saint Land disciple. This was a welcome gift from the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism to every Saint Land disciple who had just entered the Saint Land. Since he decided to go to the central square of the Saint Island of Zoroastrianism's Saint Land, Duan Lingtian put the Jasper Celestial Sword and the crystal card into his spatial ring. Then, he walked up to the heavy stone door and pushed it open. Rumble! The stone door slowly opened when it was pushed open. The sound it made was slightly muffled. When the stone door was pushed open, the true disciple Yang Wen, who was sitting cross-legged in the air outside the small courtyard where the stone house was located, suddenly opened his eyes that were as bright as stars. A terrifying killing intent emanated from his body. Duan Lingtian has come out. Many Saint Land disciples heard the commotion and shifted their attention to the small courtyard where Duan Lingtian was staying. Most of these Saint Land disciples had a pitiful expression on their faces. In their opinion, since Duan Lingtian had come out, it meant that Duan Lingtian was in trouble. After all, the true disciple, Yang Wen, had been waiting for him for 10 days. Looking at Yang Wen's attitude, there was no way he would let him off so easily. Perhaps Yang Wen did not dare to kill Duan Lingtian, or cripple Duan Lingtian, because he was afraid of the rules of Zoroastrianism. But he could torture Duan Lingtian, and torture Duan Lingtian, until he wished he was dead. Although Yang Wen did not say what he planned to do to Duan Lingtian, The people present were able to deeply sense Yang Wen's hatred for Duan Lingtian, from the killing intent emitted from his body. The enmity of killing one's brother was not a small enmity. Before the stone door was completely pushed open, Duan Lingtian sensed a terrifying killing intent sweeping in from the outside, causing him to involuntarily become vigilant. Even the movement of pushing the door open had slowed down a little. At the same time, a series of discussions resonated from outside and entered Duan Lingtian's ears. Senior brother Yang Wen is a true disciple. He's a powerhouse at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage, the Saint Origin form. It'll be easy for him to deal with Duan Lingtian. That's right. Duan Lingtian is destined to be in trouble today. It's useless even if he doesn't come out now, because senior brother Yang Wen is certain he's not in closed-door cultivation. Even if he destroys the stone house, he won't have to worry about qi deviation. So what if his strength is close to the Saint Celestial stage? So what if he has successfully comprehended the number 1 defensive divine ability of Zoroastrianism, the Black Turtle's Barrier? So what if he has mastered 4 high-grade divine abilities? He's like a dog in front of a true Saint Celestial stage powerhouse. He can only blame himself for killing senior brother Yang Wen's younger brother, Yang Wu. Otherwise, why would senior brother Yang Wen make things difficult for him? The waves of discussion entered Duan Lingtian's ears without missing a single word. It also allowed Duan Lingtian to know who the killing intent from earlier came from. It was none other than the true disciple, Yang Wen. I've long heard that Yang Chong, the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect, has 2 sons. His younger son, Yang Wu, was killed by me. His elder son is in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, and is a disciple of the Saint Land. However, I didn't expect Yang Chong's elder son, Yang Wen, is actually a true disciple whose cultivation base has entered the Saint Celestial stage. Duan Lingtian was secretly surprised by this. Naturally, it was limited to being surprised. Duan Lingtian's expression was as calm as usual. There was no hint of fear on his face at all. Even if Yang Wen doesn't dare to kill me because of the fire worship sect's rules and cripples me, I'm sure he'll do everything he can to torture me and make me wish I was dead. The moment Duan Lingtian thought of this, his eyes flashed coldly. The rules of Zoroastrianism don't prohibit disciples from torturing and humiliating them. Perhaps, this is one of the ways Zoroastrianism motivates its disciples to work harder. Duan Lingtian thought to himself at the same time. Rumble. The sound of the stone door being pushed resonated in the air again. Duan Lingtian quickened his movements. In just a short while, the stone door was pushed open. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, including Yang Wen, after the stone door was pushed open, a tall and handsome young man appeared before their eyes. His calm appearance was deeply engraved in their hearts. Although the young man's clothes were exactly the same as theirs, it could not conceal the aura he exuded. It caused them to feel a sense of inferiority. "You're Duan Lingtian?" Almost as soon as the young man stepped out of the stone house and entered the small courtyard, Yang Wen instantly stood up in the air and stared at the young man fiercely before he asked in an interrogating tone. Yang Wen's gaze was unusually sharp. If looks could kill, the young man before him would have been killed many times over. Yang Wen? The son of Northern Plethora sect's 5th elder, Yang Chong? When Yang Wen stared at Duan Lingtian fiercely and questioned him, Duan Lingtian did not answer him. Instead, he asked in return. When Yang Wen heard the young man before him was still so calm after learning his identity, he was certain the young man before him was indeed Duan Lingtian. This was his first time seeing a Saint Land's disciple who dared to be so arrogant in front of a true disciple like him. "No wonder you dare to go against Elder Lien. You're really arrogant." After confirming Duan Lingtian's identity, the killing intent in Yang Wen's body intensified. His eyes shone fiercely. His gaze was as sharp as a knife as he stared at Duan Lingtian. It was as though he wanted to cut Duan Lingtian into pieces. "However, do you think I'm Elder Lien? Do you think I won't make a move on you because of my identity?" As soon as Yang Wen finished speaking, he did not wait for Duan Lingtian's reply before he made his move. He was prepared to make a move on Duan Lingtian. At the same time, the Saint Land's disciples who were watching felt their hearts in their mouths, as they watched the scene unfold before their eyes. In their opinion, Duan Lingtian was going to be in trouble. However, at this moment, Duan Lingtian's words caused Yongwen Gang, who was about to make a move, to come to a halt. Moreover, the Saint Lan disciples who were watching from the side were shocked and in disbelief. Yongwen, you must be itching to kill me right now, right? Since that's the case, I'll give you a chance to kill me without violating the rules of Zoroastrianism. These were Duan Lingtian's words. Yongwen stopped moving when he heard these words. He asked in a deep voice, "What do you mean by that?" When Yongwen asked this question, he couldn't help but frown. "What else can I mean?" Duan Lingtian smiled indifferently when he saw the frowning Yongwen. He said nonchalantly, "If I'm not mistaken, there should be a place in the saint land of Zoroastrianism for disciples to sign a death pact, right? I'll give you a chance now. Lead the way." Duan Lingtian's expression did not change when he reached the end of his sentence. Yongwen, who was frowning, frowned slightly when he heard this. "Lead the way." Yongwen's expression changed drastically when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. After his expression changed greatly, there was another wave of change. He stared at Duan Lingtian and remained silent for a long time. No one knew what he was thinking. Whoosh! At the same time, the Saint Lan disciples who heard Duan Lingtian's words finally regained their senses and broke into an uproar. Heavens! Based on Duan Lingtian's words, it seems like he wants to have a death pact with senior brother Yongwen? One of the Saint Lan disciples who was watching could not help but exclaim, "A death pact? With senior brother Yongwen? Where did he get his courage from?" Many Saint Lan disciples narrowed their eyes in disbelief. He's just a Saint Lan disciple who has just entered the Saint Land. Although he's quite strong, he can only show off among those below the Saint Celestial stage. It's impossible for him to be compared to a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse. Another Saint Lan disciple said confidently, "Even if that's the case, why is he doing this? Look at how calm he is. It doesn't seem like he's seeking death." Some Saint Lan disciples felt something was amiss. Didn't you notice? Ever since Duan Lingtian appeared, his expression did not change at all. From the beginning until the end, he had a calm expression on his face. It was as though he could remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. This is either a display of confidence or a deliberate act. One of the Saint Lan disciples speculated, "Confidence? Don't tell me you think he can kill senior brother Yongwen?" The Saint Lan disciple's words instantly aroused disdain from more than one Saint Lan disciple. "Humph! He must be deliberately acting mysterious." More and more Saint Lan disciples said confidently. They did not think Duan Lingtian was a match for Yongwen, the true disciple whose cultivation base had already entered the Saint Celestial stage. Duan Lingtian must be deliberately acting mysterious to scare Yongwen away. Look, senior brother Yongwen seems to be slightly hesitant when faced with his suggestion of a death pact. Don't tell me he really thinks he's weaker than Duan Lingtian? Soon after, a Saint Lan disciple glanced at Yongwen and noticed his hesitation. "You're right." Chapter 1991. Duan Lingtian really has some tricks up his sleeve. He's just deliberately mystifying him, and he managed to scare senior brother Yongwen. Don't tell me senior brother Yongwen really doesn't dare to accept Duan Lingtian's suggestion for a death duel? The Saint Lan disciples whispered among themselves as they looked at Yongwen. Their words were filled with mockery. They were mocking Yongwen's cowardice. Deliberately mystifying? Naturally, Yongwen had thought of the Saint Lan disciples' thoughts. However, he did not dare to accept Duan Lingtian's suggestion so easily. He did not dare to take the risk. If he lost, it would be over for him. "It seems like you don't dare to accept my life and death duel." At this moment, Duan Lingtian finally spoke. He glanced at Yongwen indifferently before he said disdainfully, "A true disciple is nothing more than this." As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, he rose up into the air and prepared to leave. "A true disciple is nothing more than this." Duan Lingtian's disdainful words completely enraged Yongwen. His expression turned grave as he snorted coldly. "Duan Lingtian, I agree to your suggestion. Do you really think I'll be frightened by you just because you're deliberately mystifying me? What a joke." In the blink of an eye, Yongwen made his decision. If he did not dare to accept Duan Lingtian's suggestion, it meant he was afraid of Duan Lingtian, the person who killed his younger brother. If Duan Lingtian was really stronger than him, it would be a wise decision for him to reject Duan Lingtian's suggestion. On the other hand, if Duan Lingtian was not as strong as him, and was only trying to scare him, he would not dare to agree to Duan Lingtian's suggestion. It would undoubtedly be very embarrassing. When Yang Wen heard Duan Lingtian's disdainful words, he finally agreed to Duan Lingtian's suggestion after weighing the pros and cons. In his opinion, Duan Lingtian was most likely deliberately mystifying him. Agreed? Upon hearing Yang Wen's words, Duan Lingtian was stunned for a moment. A surprised expression appeared on his calm face. When the group of Saint Lan's disciples saw this, it caused another round of discussion. Did you see that? Duan Lingtian's expression changed, as if he didn't expect senior brother Yang Wen to agree to his suggestion. From this, it can be confirmed that he is indeed deliberately mystifying. Fortunately, senior brother Yang Wen agreed to his suggestion. Otherwise, not only would senior brother Yang Wen lose face for himself, he would also lose face for the core disciples. That's right. As a true disciple, he actually dared not agree to the life and death duel of an ordinary elite disciple. If this matter were to spread out, not only would he embarrass himself, but he would also embarrass the other true disciples. Fortunately, senior brother Yang Wen finally agreed to Duan Lingtian's suggestion at the critical moment. This also disrupted Duan Lingtian's scheme. The group of Holy Land disciples all felt that Yang Wen's decision was the right one. In their opinion, Duan Lingtian was deliberately mystifying. As for the purpose of deliberately mystifying, it was, naturally, to scare Yang Wen into not agreeing to the life and death duel that he proposed. However, now that Yang Wen had agreed to it, it meant that Duan Lingtian's scheme had been disrupted. At this moment, would Duan Lingtian still dare to continue with his life and death duel? Senior brother Yang Wen's agreement to Duan Lingtian's life and death duel is tantamount to checkmate Duan Lingtian. Now that Duan Lingtian's expression has changed, I think he no longer dares to continue with his life and death duel. If he continues, he'll definitely die. At this moment, in the face of a choice between life and death, I'm sure he'd rather be tortured by senior brother Yang Wen than lose his life. His plan of deliberately mystifying has failed in the end. The group of Holy Land disciples whispered among themselves again. All of them felt Duan Lingtian would definitely go back on his word after Yang Wen agreed to his life and death duel. Duan Lingtian, I've already agreed to it. Don't tell me you don't dare to accept it now. Or perhaps, you're willing to be bashed by me instead of heading to the Hall of Life and Death to sign a life and death contract and carry out a battle of life and death? Yang Wen had also noticed the surprised expression on Duan Lingtian's face. At once, a mocking smile appeared on his face. His words were filled with disdain. At this moment, Yang Wen recalled his hesitation from before and felt a sense of exhilaration. At the same time, he was glad that he had agreed to it. Otherwise, he would be the one who would be embarrassed instead of Duan Lingtian. Lead the way. In the face of the group of Holy Land disciples' disdain and Yang Wen's mockery, Duan Lingtian's expression regained its calmness. He merely uttered 2 words in response to Yang Wen's words. Lead the way. The 2 words that came out of Duan Lingtian's mouth caused the entire place to fall silent again. The group of Holy Land disciples stared at Duan Lingtian in shock. They did not expect Duan Lingtian would still dare to continue at this moment. Was he not afraid of going overboard? Yang Wen was stunned as well. He did not expect Duan Lingtian would still dare to be so domineering even after he had agreed to it. For a moment, his resolute heart was shaken again, and his expression changed again. What's wrong? You don't dare to do it anymore? Didn't you agree so readily just now? Duan Lingtian mocked when he saw the change in Yang Wen's expression. As soon as Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, Yang Wen's face turned pale. He gritted his teeth and shouted angrily. Duan Lingtian, I'd like to see if you're still going to be so mysterious when it's time to sign the death pact. As soon as he finished speaking, without waiting for Duan Lingtian's reply, Yang Wen's body moved and shot out like a bolt of lightning. His target was the central square. If you have the guts, follow me to the Palace of Death and sign the death pact to have a death duel with me. If you don't, I'll let you have a taste of a fate worse than death." Yang Wen's voice resonated from afar as he shot out. His voice was so cold that it seemed to cause the air in the surroundings to turn colder. However, after a while, Yang Wen slowed down again. He would occasionally turn around to look at Duan Lingtian in disdain, as though he wanted to see if Duan Lingtian dared to follow him to the Palace of Death. The Palace of Death was located in the central square of the Saint Island of Zoroastrianism. The Saint Island was the name of the main island of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. In the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, Saint Land disciples who had a reconcilable enmity with each other could meet at the Palace of Death and sign the death pact under the witness of the Palace of Death's elders. Moreover, they would fight to the death in the death arena of the Palace of Death. At this moment, Yang Wen was preparing to lead the way to the Palace of Death in the central square of the Saint Island. Naturally, the prerequisite was that Duan Lingtian dared to follow him. Senior brother Yang Wen has become smarter this time. He's not fooled by Duan Lingtian anymore. As the saying goes, a fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. If senior brother Yang Wen still doesn't learn, he'd be a true disciple and a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse in vain. That's right, a true disciple who doesn't dare to have a death duel with an ordinary elite disciple. Wouldn't he be laughed at if news of this spread out? Most of the Saint Land disciples secretly gave Yang Wen a thumbs up when they saw how domineering he was. At the same time, these Saint Land disciples shifted their attention to Duan Lingtian. A hint of mockery could be seen in their eyes. It was as though they wanted to see if Duan Lingtian still had the guts to follow Yang Chong to the Palace of Death in the central square of the Saint Island. Once they entered the Palace of Death and signed the death pact, they would not be able to return. Junior brother Lingtian, don't go. Senior brother Lingtian, don't go. Just as Duan Lingtian was about to follow Yang Chong, two voice transmissions entered his ears. The two voice transmissions came from two people. Duan Lingtian instantly noticed the two Saint Land disciples standing in different directions. They were the ones who had sent him voice transmissions to stop him from following Yang Chong to the Palace of Death in the central square of the Saint Island. One of them was none other than Sun De, who was robbed of his Primus house by Duan Lingtian in the Four Symbols Sanctum's First Mind's punishment zone. Similar to Duan Lingtian, Sun De was also from the Black Turtle Sanctum, one of the Four Symbols Sanctums. Sun De was able to leave the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine in advance to come to the Saint Land and become a Saint Land disciple, because he had successfully comprehended the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. The reason he was able to successfully comprehend the Black Turtle's Barrier was due to the pressure Duan Lingtian had given him that day. It was precisely because of this that he had always been grateful to Duan Lingtian. For this reason, when he saw Duan Lingtian was about to jump into the fire pit, he quickly sent a voice transmission to stop Duan Lingtian. Junior brother Lingtian, where there's life, there's hope. As long as you're still alive, you'll be able to take revenge one day. There's no need for you to follow Yang Chong to the Palace of Death just because of a moment of anger. If you really go to the Palace of Death and sign the death pact, it'll be too late even if you want to go back on your word. Sun De advised earnestly. The meaning of Sun De's words was simple. As long as he was alive, he would have a chance to take revenge. It was not worth it to die now. Thank you for your concern, senior brother Sun De. I know what I'm doing. After Duan Lingtian gave Sun De a reassuring look, he shifted his gaze to the other person who had sent him a voice transmission. He had only seen the other person who had sent him a voice transmission once. For this reason, he was very surprised when he saw the other person. This person was none other than the Saint Land disciple he had met 10 days ago. At that time, he had just left the Saint Land's new disciple registration office. He did not know where the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples were staying, so he had stopped the other party to ask for directions. Apart from that, he had no other interactions with the other party. He did not expect the other party would send him a voice transmission at this moment. Senior brother, why are you calling me senior brother now? Duan Lingtian asked with a wry smile on his face through voice transmission. He remembered when he had asked for directions that day. He had addressed the other party as senior brother, and the other party had politely addressed him as junior brother. Senior brother Lingtian, Guanxiu didn't know your identity that day, so I've neglected you. Please forgive me. The Saint Lan disciple who had reminded Duan Lingtian was none other than Guanxiu, who had given directions to Duan Lingtian 10 days ago. When he heard Duan Lingtian's voice transmission, he immediately replied in a slightly fearful manner. Duan Lingtian's strength was far greater than his. Chapter 1992. Duan Lingtian could not help but smile wryly when he heard Guanxiu's words. However, he did not continue to argue with Guanxiu on this topic, since he knew this was a world where the strong were respected. Guanxiu had addressed him as senior brother from the bottom of his heart. If he continued to address Guanxiu as senior brother, it would put a lot of pressure on Guanxiu. Senior brother Lingtian, although you're strong, I'm afraid you're not as strong as a true disciple. All of them are at the Saint Celestial stage or above. This is especially true for senior brother Yangwen. He has already broken through to the first form of the Saint Celestial stage a few years ago. Guanxiu reminded him through voice transmission with a solemn expression on his face. Duan Lingtian felt warmth in his heart when he heard Guanxiu's kindness. After all, he had only met Guanxiu once. It was rare for Guanxiu to be so kind to him. Don't worry. Duan Lingtian replied to Guanxiu through voice transmission and gave him a reassuring look. Then, under Guanxiu and Sunda's helpless gazes, he flew up and caught up with the true disciple, Yang Wen, who had already flown a distance away. Huh! Yang Wen's expression turned solemn when he saw Duan Lingtian dared to follow him. He actually dares to follow him. It seems like he won't give up before he signs the death pact. He's really going all out. However, even if he's not as strong as senior brother Yang Wen, he'll still be able to pressure senior brother Yang Wen. That's right. Look at the grave expression on senior brother Yang Wen's face. As the Saint Lan disciples shifted their gazes to Yang Wen, the grave expression on his face finally disappeared. He looked at Duan Lingtian with disdain and said disdainfully, Duan Lingtian, I'd like to see if you'll still be so unyielding when we enter the Palace of Death and sign the Death Pact. I hope you'll sign the Death Pact obediently at that time. Otherwise, I'll pull out your fingernails one by one and make you suffer a fate worse than death. When Yang Wen reached the end of his sentence, his tone became colder and colder, as though it came from an ice cave. Although it was not targeted at the group of Saint Lan disciples, it still made them shudder. Pull out my fingernails one by one? Hearing Yang Wen's harsh words, Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed with killing intent. However, his expression was frighteningly calm. I'd like to see how long you can keep up this pretense. Yang Wen was infuriated when he saw Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged after hearing his harsh words. He snorted coldly before he suddenly sped up and made his way to the square at the center of the Saint Island. Duan Lingtian followed at a leisurely pace. From the beginning to the end, he had no intention of running away. Behind them, Sunda, Guanxiu, and the group of disciples who were watching the show also followed. When the group arrived in the air above the central square of the Holy Island, the majestic flow of people alarmed the group of Holy Land's disciples in the central square. What's going on? Why are there so many people here? The person in the lead seems to be senior brother Yang Wen. It's indeed senior brother Yang Wen. The group of people behind him seems to be brought by senior brother Yang Wen. Senior brother Yang Wen's expression seems a little off. What's going on? In the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, there were only 170 over true disciples. For this reason, many Saint Lan disciples quickly recognized Yang Wen, the true disciple. Although Yang Wen's strength could only be considered as the weakest among the group of true disciples, there were still many true disciples. However, there were only so many successor disciples, so it was still very easy to recognize them. Senior brother Yang Wen. Is he going to the Palace of Death? Heavens! What's going on? Which true disciple is senior brother Yang Wen going to have a death duel with? When the thousands of Saint Lan disciples in the central square saw Yang Wen taking the lead, and heading towards the Palace of Death. It caused a commotion in the central square. When Yang Wen's figure landed outside the Palace of Death, the thousands of Saint Lan disciples in the central square learned about what had happened from the group of Saint Lan disciples behind Yang Wen. Senior brother Yang Wen is actually the son of the Northern Plethora sect's fifth elder? That young man behind senior brother Yang Wen is Duan Lingtian, who's famous in Zoroastrianism recently, a nine-clawed dragon warrior, a genius martial cultivator, who has mastered 4 high-grade divine abilities. Duan Lingtian is the one who issued a death duel with senior brother Yang Wen today? When the matter was revealed, the group of Saint Lan disciples in the central square burst into an uproar again. An ordinary elite disciple issuing a death duel with a true disciple. In the history of Zoroastrianism, such a ridiculous matter had never happened before. After all, a true disciple represented the strength of a saint celestial. It was not something an ordinary elite disciple could compare to. For a time, many Saint Lan disciples felt the same way as the Saint Lan disciples who had just arrived. They felt Duan Lingtian was deliberately mystifying and trying to scare Yang Wen. I'm guessing Duan Lingtian will definitely not dare to sign the death duel after entering the Palace of Death. This Duan Lingtian is not simple. He's been playing mind games. I'm guessing he'll only refuse to sign the death duel after senior brother Yang Wen signs his name on the death duel and imprints his fingerprint. Based on the current situation, he'll most likely do that. Once senior brother Yang Wen hesitates and refuses to sign the death duel, he'll win this mind game. Naturally, Duan Lingtian heard the discussion among the Saint Lan disciples. Mind games? Perhaps. Duan Lingtian was not the only one who heard the Saint Lan disciples' discussion. Even Yang Wen had heard it as well. Yang Wen hesitated for a moment. Up until now, it seemed like he was not mentally prepared for the death duel. Even when he brought Duan Lingtian here, he only wanted to scare Duan Lingtian. After all, he was only 90% confident he could kill Duan Lingtian. The reason he was not 100% confident was because up until now, he still did not dare to be 100% sure if Duan Lingtian was really strong, or if he was just bluffing when he suggested a death duel. The reason for this was because of the death of his younger brother, Yang Wu. He was well aware of how Yang Wu had died. It was Yang Wu who first challenged Duan Lingtian to a death duel. During the death duel, Yang Wu was killed by Duan Lingtian. Due to this reason, he was traumatized. Although he was 100% certain Duan Lingtian was not a match for him in the depths of his heart, he did not dare to make up his mind to fight Duan Lingtian to the death, due to the shadow in his heart. As an older brother, he did not want to follow in his younger brother's footsteps. Don't tell me this Duan Lingtian is only going to go back on his word after I sign the death duel and put my handprint on the death duel? Yang Wen's heart sank when he thought of this. However, faced with the thousands of Saint Lan's disciples behind him, he knew this matter was no longer going to end peacefully. As the saying went, there was no turning back once the bow was drawn. Palace of Death. At the same time, Duan Lingtian, who was following closely behind Yang Wen, shifted his gaze to the majestic and gigantic palace in front of him. He saw a plaque hanging on the palace's main entrance with the words Palace of Death, written in flamboyant calligraphy. Why did senior brother Yang Wen stop? Go in. He's already at the entrance, why did he stop? Senior brother Yang Wen is afraid, right? He's a true disciple. Why is he afraid of an ordinary elite disciple who's deliberately mystifying himself? Since Yang Wen, who had taken the lead, was standing outside the Hall of Life and Death without making a move for a long time, the group of Holy Land's disciples who had followed behind him to watch the show became impatient and began to complain. True disciple? If you don't dare to do it, leave now. Don't embarrass yourself here. He's a disgrace to all true disciples today. No matter when or where, there was no lack of people who wanted to stir up trouble. Many Saint Lan's disciples were hiding in the dark. They were afraid Yang Wen would drag them out, but they could not help but mock Yang Wen. Shut up. Along with a loud shout, Yang Wen's face darkened as he spoke in anger. His voice was so loud that it drowned out the noise at the entrance of the Hall of Life and Death, causing a group of Holy Land disciples to shut their mouths. under the watchful eyes of the others. Yang Wen turned around and looked at Duan Lingtian coldly before he said in a deep voice, Duan Lingtian, I hope you'll have the guts to sign your name and put your handprint on the death duel after I sign the death duel. If you go back on your words at that time, not only will I pull out your fingernails one by one, but I'll also tear the skin off your face and destroy your face. As soon as Yang Wen finished speaking, he turned around and walked into the Palace of Death without waiting for Duan Lingtian's reply. The moment Yang Wen's words left his mouth, Duan Lingtian's expression changed immediately. He was no longer as calm as he was before. Tear the skin off his face piece by piece? Yang Wen's ruthlessness enraged Duan Lingtian. He could no longer maintain his composure. When Duan Lingtian saw Yang Wen walking into the Palace of Death, he followed suit. He's going in. Let's go. Let's go in and watch the show. The Palace of Death's death duel hasn't been opened for a long time. This time, I must bet all the contribution points in my crystal card. Even if the payout for senior brother Yang Wen's victory isn't high. Don't you think it's too early to say all these? We don't even know if Duan Lingtian dares to sign the death duel yet. The group of Saint Lan's disciples at the back made a fuss as they followed suit. However, they stopped at the entrance of the Palace of Death. Chapter 1993. Yang Wen, who took the lead, and Duan Lingtian, who followed closely behind, entered the Palace of Death one after another. After entering the Palace of Death, the first thing that entered Duan Lingtian's eyes was a battle arena in the distance. The battle arena was huge. Apart from the area where Duan Lingtian was standing, the other three sides of the battle arena were seats for spectators. However, at this moment the seats were empty. One could vaguely see many dried bloodstains on the battle arena. It was obvious the bloodstains were left behind in the past. So this is the death arena? Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes at this moment. The death arena was a venue provided by the Palace of Death for two Zoroastrianism Saint Lan disciples who had signed a death pact to fight to the death. One of them was destined to die in the death arena. Both of you are going to sign a death pact. When Duan Lingtian and Yang Wen's eyes landed on the death arena in the distance, a hoarse voice resonated in their ears. At first, the hoarse voice sounded from afar. However, in just a blink of an eye, it seemed to be right next to them. When Duan Lingtian and Yang Wen regained their senses, they instantly noticed that an old man had appeared next to them without them noticing. The old man was skinny and had an ordinary appearance. He was dressed in the uniform of a Silver Flame Elder. It was obvious he was a Silver Flame Elder, the custodian of the Palace of Death. Along the way, Duan Lingtian had learned about the Palace of Death from many Saint Lan disciples. He knew there was a Silver Flame Elder and 3 Bronze Flame Elders in the Palace of Death. The only Silver Flame Elder was the manager of the Palace of Life and Death. The custodian of the Palace of Death was called Niezue. He was widely acknowledged as the strongest Silver Flame Elder in the Zoroastrianism. If Lian was the first Silver Flame Elder in the Black Turtle Sanctum of the 4 Symbols Sanctums, then Niezue would be the first Silver Flame Elder in the Zoroastrianism. This is the custodian of the Palace of Death, an expert in the top 100 of the Supreme Saint ranking? Looking at this inconspicuous old man, Duan Lingtian secretly gasped. When the group of Saint Lan disciples mentioned the Palace of Death earlier, they naturally mentioned the Palace of Death's custodian, Niezue. Therefore, Duan Lingtian knew that Niezue was not only the steward of the Palace of Life and Death, but he was also ranked 78th on the Supreme Saint ranking. It was said that among the Silver Flame Elders of Zoroastrianism, only 2 of them were ranked in the top 100 of the Supreme Saint ranking. Niezue was ranked 78th on the Supreme Saint ranking, while the Silver Flame Elder, who was ranked in the top 100 of the Supreme Saint ranking, was ranked 99th on the Supreme Saint ranking. He was far behind Niezue. True disciple Yang Wen greets Elder Niezue. While Duan Lingtian was guessing that the person before him was Niezue, Yang Wen had already bowed respectfully to the old man. Even someone as arrogant as Yang Wen lowered his head before Elder Niezue. Duan Lingtian greets Elder Niezue. Yang Wen's voice jolted Duan Lingtian back to his senses. Duan Lingtian immediately nodded his head and greeted the old man. At the same time, Duan Lingtian noticed the old man's calm gaze swept past him and Yangwen. Although his gaze was calm, it gave Duan Lingtian a sense of pressure. Did both of you come to the Palace of Death to sign a death pact and have a death duel? The old man finally asked. As the steward of the Palace of Death, he, naturally, knew the Saint Land disciples would not come to him unless they had a death duel. As soon as Niezue finished speaking, Yangwen did not reply to the old man. Instead, he looked at Duan Lingtian to see how Duan Lingtian would respond. This was because if Duan Lingtian said yes, and Duan Lingtian went back on his word, although the steward of the Palace of Death would not force him to sign the death pact, he would definitely teach him a lesson. This was because he was already making fun of the steward of the Palace of Death and insulting the dignity of the Palace of Death. It was understandable for the steward of the Palace of Death to teach him a lesson. As long as he was not killed or crippled, even the St. Land's Enforcement Hall would not care. Yes. When Duan Lingtian saw Yangwen did not reply to Niezue and looked at him instead, he naturally knew what Yangwen was thinking. However, he still responded without any hesitation. However, Yangwen's expression changed slightly when he heard Duan Lingtian's response. However, Yangwen's expression only changed for a moment before a gloating expression appeared on his face again. It was obvious he did not think Duan Lingtian would dare to sign the death pact. Follow me. After Niezue finished speaking, he walked to the side. Duan Lingtian and Yangwen followed closely behind him. Soon after, under Niezue's instructions, one of the 3 bronze flame elders in the Palace of Death brought a piece of life and death contract, a brush that was dyed with ink, and a plate of specially made ink. Who's going to go first? Niezue asked nonchalantly as he looked at Duan Lingtian and Yangwen. Him. Duan Lingtian and Yangwen looked at each other at the same time and said in unison, "Humph." Niezue snorted when he saw Duan Lingtian and Yangwen's refusal. He looked at Yangwen and said nonchalantly, "You didn't reply when I asked if you're here to sign the death pact. Now, you'll sign the death pact first." Yangwen did not expect he would be placed in such a situation, because he did not reply to Niezue earlier. Niezue actually asked him to sign the death pact first. He immediately thought of the death of his biological brother, Yang Wu, and a hint of dread rose in his heart. He looked at Niezue and said, "Elder Niezue, can you let him sign the death pact first? If he dares to sign the death pact, I'll definitely sign it as well." Haha, Yangwen, you're a true disciple after all. Don't tell me you're afraid of an ordinary elite disciple like me? The moment Yangwen's words left his mouth, Niezue's expression turned grave immediately. Duan Lingtian, on the other hand, could not help but laugh out loud. At the same time, he did not forget to mock Yangwen. Naturally, he would not sign the death pact first. What if Yangwen went back on his word after he signed the death pact? After all, the reason he came here today was to kill Yangwen. It was not only because Yangwen wanted to kill him, but it was also because Yangwen's father, Yang Chong, the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect, had threatened him earlier. Yang Chong actually wanted to kill his family. In Duan Lingtian's opinion, the moment Yang Chong threatened him with his family, he was already on the opposite side of Yang Chong. He would not rest until one of them was dead. Since Yang Chong wanted to kill his family, he would kill Yang Chong's son. Since he had already killed the younger one, he would kill the older one as well. Yang Chong, I really want to see what kind of expression you'll have when you find out I killed your eldest son as well. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Yang Wen's expression turned grave immediately. He immediately glared at Duan Lingtian. Yang Wen, you're the son of Yang Chong, the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect? Niezue asked indifferently as he looked at Yang Wen. Yes. Upon hearing Niezue's question, Yang Wen hurriedly withdrew his angry gaze from Duan Lingtian and replied respectfully. No matter what, your father is a powerhouse ranked at the 146th place on the Supreme Saint ranking. As his son, and a true disciple of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, don't tell me you don't dare to sign the death pact, even though you've come to my palace of death with someone else? If you don't dare to sign it, get lost now. A hint of anger could be seen on Niezue's face when he finished speaking. His tone was not friendly at all. At the same time, a terrifying aura emitted from Niezue's body and shrouded Yang Wen's body. It was so oppressive that Yang Wen's face turned pale. Duan Lingtian clicked his tongue and said, I wonder if Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect, would be so angry that he would throw up 3 liters of blood when he finds out his eldest son missed the opportunity to avenge his youngest son? As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, Yang Wen's eyes widened immediately. Niezue also looked at Duan Lingtian with a hint of surprise in his eyes. You're Duan Lingtian? Although he was in the saint land of Zoroastrianism, he had heard about the death of Yang Wu, the youngest son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect. He knew Yang Wu was killed by a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple called Duan Lingtian. Not only that, but he had also heard about Duan Lingtian. He also knew Duan Lingtian had come to the saint land of Zoroastrianism to become a saint land disciple, because he had successfully comprehended the Black Turtle's barrier, the treasured divine ability of the Black Turtle Sanctum. Although he had heard about Duan Lingtian more than once, he had never seen Duan Lingtian before today. For this reason, he did not recognize Duan Lingtian. Yes, when faced with Niezue, Duan Lingtian quickly put away his expression that seemed eager to see the world plunged into chaos, and nodded respectfully. I'll sign it. While Niezue was looking at Duan Lingtian and was about to say something, Yang Wen suddenly shouted. Then, Yang Wen stepped forward with bloodshot eyes and took the writing brush from the Palace of Death's bronze flame elder's hand. With a few swishing sounds, he signed his name on the death contract. Smack! A soft sound resonated in the air. Yang Wen placed his right hand on the special ink pad and used his hand that was stained with the ink pad to leave his handprint on the death contract. After signing the death contract unilaterally, Yang Wen turned around and looked at Duan Lingtian. He sneered and said, Duan Lingtian, if you don't dare to sign this death contract, it means you're toying with Elder Niezue and blaspheming the Palace of Death. As soon as Yang Wen spoke, he had forced Duan Lingtian to the opposite side of the Palace of Death. When Yang Wen spoke, apart from Niezue, who was the overseer of the Palace of Death, the other 3 bronze flame elders from the Palace of Death glared at Duan Lingtian with hostility. You don't have to worry about this. Chapter 1994. As soon as he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian signed his name and left his fingerprint on the death pact under Yang Wen's incredulous gaze. The death pact is formed. As soon as Duan Lingtian signed the death pact, the bronze flame elder from the Palace of Death, who was holding the death pact, said loudly, Yang Wen and Duan Lingtian will enter the death arena in a little while and have a death duel. A little while? Duan Lingtian was stunned. A puzzled expression appeared on his face. He did not know why they had to wait until a little while before the death duel. Was there a need to wait until so late? In the next hour, the Palace of Death will be the banker and launch a bet for the death duel between you and Yang Wen. If you're confident, you can bet all your contribution points on yourself, and bet that you'll be able to survive until the end. Of course, if you die, even if you don't bet on yourself, your contribution points won't be of any use to you. As though he could see Duan Lingtian's confusion, Niezue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, explained nonchalantly, for this reason, those who enter the death arena will usually bet all their contribution points on themselves. Duan Lingtian finally understood. He did not expect the Palace of Death to have such a tradition, even though it was a solemn place. The Palace of Death won't take any of the Saint Land's disciples' contribution points. Will only act as the middleman and mix all of your contribution points together before calculating the odds based on your contribution points. Naturally, if the elders from the Palace of Death think highly of someone, they can place a bet as well, Niezue said. Duan Lingtian nodded. Elder Niezue, you mean the other Saint Land's disciples can place a bet as well? Duan Lingtian asked in surprise. Of course, Niezue replied. Otherwise, what do you think the spectator seats around the death arena are for? If you want to place a bet, you can look for the other 2 bronze flame elders in the Palace of Death. After you've placed your bet and entered the death arena, the other Saint Land's disciples will be able to enter the Palace of Death to place their bets and enter the spectator seats around the death arena. Before I give the order, even though the two of you are in the death arena, you are not allowed to make a move. Otherwise, the first to attack will be severely punished by the Hall of Life and Death. Speaking up to this point, Niezue's tone became more severe. The traditions of the Hall of Life and Death cannot be overturned by anyone. Duan Lingtian nodded. He then walked out and looked for the other two bronze flame elders to place their bets. What a pity. I only have 100 contribution points. When he placed his bet, Duan Lingtian could not help but sigh to himself. At the same time, he muttered in his heart, I only hope that the others will place their bets on Yangwen. That way, I can still win quite a bit. Yangwen, why aren't you going to bet? After Duan Lingtian placed his bet and stepped into the death arena, Niezue looked at Yangwen, who was still standing in place. His expression darkened as he shouted in a low voice. Yangwen could not help but shudder immediately. When he regained his senses, he hastily placed his bet. After placing his bet, Yangwen flew up to the death arena and stared at Duan Lingtian. His eyes were filled with hostility as he stared at Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, although I don't know where you got your courage from to sign the death arena contract for a death duel with me, Yangwen, I still have to tell you that I'll definitely kill you today to avenge my brother. To avenge my father. Yangwen's expression was gloomy as he enunciated each word clearly. Everyone knows how to boast. Whether you can kill me or not depends on whether you have the ability to do so. Unlike Yangwen, Duan Lingtian's expression was calm. After hearing Yangwen's harsh words, he took his time to reply. I'd like to see if your expression will still be as calm after an hour. Yangwen sneered. Then you can wait patiently. Duan Lingtian said nonchalantly. At the same time, he shifted his gaze to look outside the Death Palace. Almost as soon as Duan Lingtian shifted his gaze, the group of Saint Lan disciples outside the Death Palace seemed to have received some kind of order and immediately swarmed in. At once, the Death Palace seemed to have turned into a noisy marketplace. Duan Lingtian actually signed the Death Arena contract? Many Saint Lan disciples had an expression of shock and disbelief on their faces. Until now, they still had not recovered from the shock of Duan Lingtian signing the Death Arena contract. I really don't know where he gets his courage from. To think he actually signed the Death Arena contract. He's seeking death. Some Saint Lan disciples immediately said disdainfully. They felt Duan Lingtian had overestimated himself by signing the Death Arena contract. I think this Duan Lingtian is a little strange. Ever since he came to Zoroastrianism, he has been fighting with the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder, Lian, since the beginning, but he didn't suffer any losses. Based on what he did after that, he doesn't seem like someone who would suffer losses. A Saint Lan disciple could not help but say, when he recalled Duan Lingtian's experience after he came to Zoroastrianism. Many Saint Lan disciples began to laugh at this Saint Lan disciple's words. What? Don't tell me you think he's stronger than senior brother Yangwen? Do you think he'll be able to kill senior brother Yangwen in this death arena? Stop joking. The reason Duan Lingtian has not suffered any losses since he came to Zoroastrianism is because he's quite strong, and he hasn't encountered any tough opponents yet. As for Elder Lian, he didn't dare to make a move on him because of his status. Otherwise, do you think he'd be able to survive until now? That's right. If you think Duan Lingtian can survive today, you can bet on him. However, I'm afraid you'll lose everything. That's right. Since you're so confident in Duan Lingtian, you can bet on him. This way, we'll be able to earn more contribution points. Perhaps, even this Saint Lan disciple did not know his words would cause so many Saint Lan disciples to laugh at him. He immediately shut his mouth. As for betting on Duan Lingtian, he was not stupid enough to bet on him. What he said just now was purely an irresponsible guess. It was not his real thoughts. In his opinion, Yangwen had a higher chance of surviving today's death arena. After all, Yangwen was a true disciple of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Moreover, he was a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse. As for Duan Lingtian, although he had mastered a few high-grade divine abilities and was quite strong, It would be difficult for him to catch up to Yang Wen since he only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root, let alone kill him. I'll bet 300 contribution points on senior brother Yang Wen. I'll bet 500 contribution points on senior brother Yang Wen. I'm going all out. I'll bet 3,300 contribution points on senior brother Yang Wen. As the group of Saint Lan disciples entered the death arena, the two Palace of Death Bronze Flame Elders, who were in charge of collecting the bets, became busy as well. 15 minutes had passed, but not a single Saint Lan disciple had bet on Duan Lingtian. Based on this, one could see how much they did not think Duan Lingtian would win. Nobody's betting on Duan Lingtian? This situation quickly attracted the attention of some Saint Lan disciples. If this continues, how are we going to earn any contribution points? That's right. The wager in the Palace of Life and Death is calculated based on the bets placed by both parties. If everyone placed their bets on senior brother Yang Wen, we would only be able to take back our own contribution points. We wouldn't be able to earn a single contribution point. Otherwise, who's going to bet on Duan Lingtian? If this continues, we won't be able to earn any contribution points at all. Do you think we're stupid? Betting on Duan Lingtian? Wouldn't that be equivalent to wasting our contribution points? The group of Saint Lan disciples fell into an uproar again. None of them thought Duan Lingtian would win. All of them felt Duan Lingtian would definitely die today. Although Duan Lingtian is quite strong, he only has a yellow innate spiritual root. Due to his innate talent, it's difficult for him to achieve anything great even if he has mastered a few high-grade divine abilities. That's right. Under such circumstances, only a fool would bet on him. This can't go on. If we all bet on senior brother Yang Wen, we won't be able to earn any contribution points at all. There's nothing we can do about that. Why don't you bet on Duan Lingtian instead? I'm not a fool. Meanwhile, the group of Saint Lan disciples continued to discuss among themselves. Nobody was willing to bet on Duan Lingtian after a long time. A voice suddenly sounded and attracted the attention of the group of Saint Lan disciples. I'll bet 100 contribution points on Duan Lingtian. A Saint Lan disciple took the lead and placed his bet on Duan Lingtian. Although it was only 100 contribution points, many Saint Lan disciples' eyes lit up immediately. They felt it was good that someone took the lead. There would definitely be many people who would follow suit. In that case, they would not have to worry about not earning enough contribution points. It did not matter if they did not earn much. It was fine as long as they earned some contribution points. As the saying went, a mosquito is still meat. Isn't he Sunda? Sunda? The Saint Lan disciple who successfully comprehended the Black Turtle's sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier, before Duan Lingtian and came to our Saint Land? That's him. I heard the reason he managed to comprehend the Black Turtle's barrier was because Duan Lingtian inadvertently helped him. No wonder he would bet on Duan Lingtian. As it turns out, he wants to return the favor to Duan Lingtian. He's smart to know that this is his last chance to return the favor to Duan Lingtian. After today, even if he wants to return the favor to Duan Lingtian, he won't be able to do so anymore. Many Saint Lan disciples recognized the Saint Lan disciple, Sunda, who had bet on Duan Lingtian. Junior brother Lingtian, I've just arrived at the Saint Land, and I only have so many contribution points. Sunda smiled wryly as he looked at Duan Lingtian, who was in the death arena. Chapter 1995. It's all right. It's fine as long as I can earn something. As Duan Lingtian replied to Sunda through voice transmission, he could tell Sunda did not think highly of him. He knew Sunda was only willing to bet on him because of other reasons. At the same time, Duan Lingtian looked at Guan Xiao, the Saint Lan disciple who had given him directions 10 days ago, and reminded him out of concern today. Just as he was about to remind Guan Xiao to bet on him through voice transmission, he realized Guan Xiao had already placed his bet. 3,500 contribution points on senior brother Duan Lingtian. Without Duan Lingtian's reminder, Guan Xiao placed 3,500 contribution points on Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian instantly felt a surge of warmth in his heart. At this moment, Guan Xiao gave him a feeling of being acknowledged. This feeling made him feel very comfortable. As Guan Xiu placed his bet, the originally noisy atmosphere in the Palace of Death suddenly fell silent. Each and every one of the Holy Ground's disciples looked at Guan Xiu in astonishment. 3,500 contribution points? All on Duan Lingtian? Isn't he afraid of losing everything? I recognize him. His name is Guan Xiu, and he can be considered as a senior Saint Land disciple in the Zoroastrianism Saint Land. However, 3,500 contribution points is most likely all he has. He's really bold. Isn't he afraid of losing everything? No matter what, he and Sunda have made a good start. Now, I'm not afraid of losing contribution points. That's true. Many Saint Land disciples laughed. Guan Xiu, you're crazy. Some of the Saint Land disciples who knew Guan Xiu stared at him with their mouths agape. They thought he was crazy. In their opinion, under such an obvious situation, only an idiot would bet on Duan Lingtian. However, Guan Xiu ignored these people's doubts. Instead, he immediately looked at Duan Lingtian and said through voice transmission, "Senior brother Lingtian, based on the current situation, I can't help you much. I'll place all the contribution points in my crystal card on you as a form of support. Good luck. Today, I will definitely let you make a huge profit." Duan Lingtian gave Guan Xiu a reassuring look before retracting his gaze. The group of Holy Land disciples had no choice but to admit that they had overestimated Sunda and Guan Xiu's leadership. After Guan Xiu had placed 3,500 contribution points on Duan Lingtian, some people had also placed bets on Duan Lingtian, but none of the bets added up to 3,000 contribution points. Aren't you betting too little on Duan Lingtian? Quite a lot. It's better than nothing. The payout rate for the opening of the Death Arena today must be very exaggerated. I estimate that there are at least 800,000 contribution points betting on Senior Brother Yang 1, if not 1 million. I think so too. Although I bet 1,000 contribution points, even if Senior Brother Yang 1 wins, I reckon I'll only earn a few contribution points. Forget it. Since it's a sure win, I'll just earn as many contribution points as I can. I bet 3,000 contribution points. However, the odds are too low. I estimate that I can only earn a dozen or so contribution points. As the group of Holy Land disciples discussed among themselves, they also flew into the spectator seats around the Death Arena. After they sat down, their eyes shifted to the two people standing in the Death Arena in unison as they waited for the death duel to begin. After about half an hour and a quarter of an hour, the people who were supposed to place their bets had already placed their bets. The death duel would officially begin after 15 minutes. Within this 15 minutes, other than the remaining 15 minutes, where bets were still being accepted, the odds for the bets that the Palace of Life and Death had set up were also calculated and displayed before everyone's eyes. The total number of contribution points betting on Duan Lingtian is only about 6,000 contribution points. However, the total number of contribution points betting on Senior Brother Yang 1 is at least a few 100,000, or even millions of contribution points betting on him. The odds must be very exaggerated. Indeed, I only hope it's within 200 to 1. Initially, I thought I could take this opportunity to make a fortune. I didn't expect almost everyone would bet on Senior Brother Yang 1. It seems like nobody's stupid. The group of Saint Land disciples in the spectator seats kept talking about the bet that Duan Lingtian and Yang 1 would place on the death duel. All of them were looking forward to the final payout. Now, I can only hope that the few elders in the Palace of Death have also placed their bets on Duan Lingtian. Otherwise, I can't even look at the payout rate. A Holy Land disciple suddenly remembered that the few elders in the Palace of Death could also place their bets. He could not help but say excitedly, "I don't think so. The elders in the Palace of Death are all shrewd people. It's impossible for them to think highly of Duan Lingtian." However, as soon as another Holy Land disciple spoke, the enthusiasm of this Holy Land disciple seemed to have been extinguished by a pail of cold water. "I'll bet 100,000 contribution points on Duan Lingtian." Without warning, a cold voice resonated from outside the Palace of Death. It shocked the group of people in the Palace of Death. Even the custodian of the Palace of Death, Niezue, could not help but narrow his eyes. Soon after, under the watchful eyes of the others, two figures appeared side by side in the Palace of Death. They were two young men. Moreover, the two young men's appearances were somewhat similar to each other. Senior brother Lu Mu? Duan Lingtian's eyes landed on the young man on the right. He was shocked. He did not expect to see him here. The Saint Land's assessment had yet to begin, right? Why would he appear in the Saint Land? Moreover, he was wearing the uniform of a Saint Land disciple. The person in front of Duan Lingtian was none other than the White Tiger Sanctum's disciple, Lu Mu, whom he had met when he went to the White Tiger Sanctum to look for Zhu Luqi. At that time, Lu Mu's cultivation base was already at the Mastery Quintessential Saint stage. It would not be difficult for him to pass the Saint Land's assessment. Duan Lingtian had thought about meeting Lu Mu again, but he thought it would only happen after the Saint Land's assessment. He did not expect to see Lu Mu before the Saint Land's assessment began. It's senior brother Lu Yun. It's really senior brother Lu Yun. Who's the Saint Land disciple standing next to him? Why does he look so similar to senior brother Lu Yun? I heard that senior brother Lu Yun has a cousin in the White Tiger Sanctum. Don't tell me he's senior brother Lu Yun's cousin? The Saint Land's assessment has yet to begin, right? Why would he be here? While Duan Lingtian was shocked by Lu Mu's appearance, most of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples present on the scene were also shocked by the appearance of the young man next to Lu Mu. Even Yang Wen, who was confronting Duan Lingtian, could not help but have a hint of dread in his eyes when he looked at the young man next to Lu Mu. Lu Yun was also a true disciple like him. However, compared to him, Lu Yun was much more famous. In the fire worship sect's Saint Land, there was a ranking list for the true disciples. It was called the True Ranking. There were a total of 100 names on the ranking list. Only the strongest 100 among the 170 or so true disciples were qualified to be listed on the ranking list. Yang Wen was still not qualified to be listed on the true ranking. However, Lu Yun had long been ranked 27th on the true ranking. He was one of the strongest true disciples in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Due to this reason, his appearance had caused quite a commotion. Why is senior brother Lu Yun here? Moreover, he actually wanted to bet 100,000 contribution points on Duan Lingtian. Is he joking? Under the puzzled gazes of many Saint Land disciples, Lu Yun went to look for the Palace of Death's Bronze Flame Elder and took out his crystal card to bet 100,000 contribution points. From the beginning until the end, he did not even frown at all. Senior brother Lu Yun has so much confidence in Duan Lingtian? Oh my god! After senior brother Lu Yun's actions, I'm starting to regret betting all my contribution points on senior brother Yang Wen. Right now, I even want to bet more on Duan Lingtian. It's not for any other reason, but for senior brother Lu Yun to think highly of him and make him bet 100,000 contribution points on him. Just as the disciples of the Saint Land were about to make a move, they saw whoosh. Duan Lingtian, who was originally standing in the death arena, suddenly soared into the air and charged toward the young man who came with Lu Yun. Senior brother Lu Mu, when did you come to the Saint Land? Moreover, how did you become a Saint Land disciple? Duan Lingtian asked in surprise as he looked at Lu Mu. Although he had only met Lu Mu once in the past, because of their similar natures, it did not affect them from becoming friends. For this reason, he was surprised and delighted when he saw Lu Mu in the Palace of Death. Junior brother Lingtian, could it be that only you're allowed to comprehend the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, but I'm not allowed to comprehend the White Tiger Sanctum's most treasured divine ability? Lu Mu smiled. His words revealed the reason he came to the Saint Land and became a Saint Land disciple. As it turned out, Lu Mu was able to come to the Saint Land and become a Saint Land disciple because he had successfully comprehended the White Tiger Sanctum's most treasured divine ability. Of course not. I'm just a little surprised. Duan Lingtian smiled awkwardly. You're Duan Lingtian? At the same time, Lu Yun, who had finished placing his bet, returned to Lu Mu's side. He glanced at Duan Lingtian indifferently before he said in a cold and calm voice, "My cousin asked me to place my bet on you. I hope you won't disappoint him and me." After that, Lu Yun did not wait for Duan Lingtian's reply before he flew toward the spectator's seat. The spectator's seat had a great view. It was already filled with people. However, when the group of Saint Lan disciples sitting in the spectator's seat saw Lu Yun's arrival, they stood up and made way for him, as though he was a plague. Junior brother Ling Tian, my cousin has always been like this. Please don't blame him. Chapter 1996. It's all right. Duan Lingtian shook his head. He could tell Lu Yun did not have any ill intentions. 100,000 contribution points, however, when he recalled Lu Yun had bet 100,000 contribution points on him, he could not help but narrow his eyes. When he opened them again, a glint flashed in his eyes as though he had thought of something. Senior brother Lu Mu, please look for senior brother Lu Yun first. I have an urgent matter to discuss with Elder Nie Zue. Duan Lingtian hastily told Lu Mu and smiled apologetically. He did not wait for Lu Mu's reply, and immediately flew out to meet Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, who had just soared up to the sky and was preparing to host the death duel in the death arena. Is there anything? Nie Zue asked with a frown when he saw Duan Lingtian had appeared in front of him in just a blink of an eye and was blocking his path. At the same time, all the Saint Lan disciples present on the scene, including Lu Mu, shifted their attention to Duan Lingtian. Why is Duan Lingtian looking for Elder Nie Zue at this time? The death duel was about to begin. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was not waiting in the death arena. Instead, he was looking for Elder Nie Zue. Everyone could not help but wonder what he was trying to do. Elder Nie Zue, under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian raised his hand, and a dilapidated bow appeared in his hand. There were 10 holes on the bow, making it look even more dilapidated. The only thing worth mentioning was the bowstring of the bow was not simple. Naturally, Nie Zue was the only one whose eyes lit up slightly. He could tell the bowstring of the bow was not simple. As for the others, they did not notice the bowstring since they were too far away. When they saw the bow that Duan Lingtian took out, most of them had a look of disdain on their faces. Why is Duan Lingtian taking out this dilapidated bow at this time? I don't know. Perhaps he's trying to bribe Elder Nie Zue with this dilapidated bow, so he can cancel the death duel. What a joke. Don't worry, Elder Nie Zue doesn't care about this crappy bow at all. Even if he did, it's impossible for Elder Nie Zue to cancel today's life and death duel. The life and death contract has already been signed. If Elder Nie Zue abuses his authority to cancel today's life and death duel, then his position as the manager of the Palace of Life and Death will come to an end. The group of Holy Land disciples discussed animatedly, and their tone was full of ridicule and disdain. At the same time, Duan Lingtian looked at Nie Zue and said, Elder Nie Zue, I would like to pawn this bow with you in exchange for some contribution points to bet on myself. In today's battle to the death, if I die, this bow will be yours. If I'm lucky enough to survive, I'll use twice the contribution points to redeem it. As Duan Lingtian spoke, he handed the bow in his hand to Nie Zue. The seemingly broken bow in Duan Lingtian's hand was none other than the sun-shooting bow. When the sun-shooting bow was at its peak, it was an extremely powerful celestial supreme treasure. However, when Duan Lingtian obtained it, not only was the bowstring missing, but the 10 most important heavenly jewels on the bow were also missing. Even so, the sun-shooting bow was still extremely powerful after the 5-clawed devil dragon's dragon tendon was used as the bowstring. However, since Duan Lingtian had obtained the legacy of the Sovereign Heart Sword, he had focused all his attention on the sword Dao. Due to this reason, the sun-shooting bow was gradually covered in dust. If it was not for the fact that Lu Yun had bet 100,000 contribution points on him, he would not have remembered the sun-shooting bow at all. Currently, he wanted to pawn the sun-shooting bow with Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, in exchange for some contribution points. After the battle to the death, he would redeem the sun-shooting bow. He believed that with Nie Zue's strength and identity, he would be able to tell how extraordinary the sun-shooting bow was. It seems like you're very confident in yourself. Nie Zue looked deeply at Duan Lingtian, before he reached out to take the sun-shooting bow from Duan Lingtian. When his gaze landed on the sun-shooting bow, his eyes gradually lit up. Although he could tell the bowstring was extraordinary, he did not pay attention to the bow itself. Now that he held the bow, he realized the most precious part of the bow was not the bowstring, but the bow itself. It's not that I'm confident in myself. After all, if I die today, everything that belongs to me will no longer belong to me. I might as well pawn the most precious thing in my possession and take a gamble. When Duan Lingtian heard Niezue's words, he said calmly, "Pfft." At this moment, a scoff sounded in the air. It was Yang Wen who was standing in the death arena. He glanced at Duan Lingtian in disdain and said with contempt, "Duan Lingtian, from what you said, this lousy bow is the most precious thing in your possession? How pathetic. Do you think Elder Niezue would be interested in your lousy bow? What a joke." Most of the other Saint Land disciples were also looking at Duan Lingtian mockingly. Has this Duan Lingtian gone crazy from thinking about contribution points? He actually wants to pawn such a lousy bow in Elder Niezue's hands in exchange for contribution points. Is there something wrong with his head? Such a lousy bow is obviously from a street stall. Even if he sells it to me at a price of 1 contribution point, I'll still have to consider buying it. He's really bold to actually use such a lousy bow to try and take advantage of Elder Niezue. The group of Saint Land disciples' words were filled with disdain. All of them felt Duan Lingtian was being too naive. He actually wanted to use a lousy bow to gain something without risking anything. Moreover, of all people, he actually dared to look for Elder Niezue. Did he really think Elder Niezue was blind? At this moment, even Lu Yun, Lu Mu Sunda, and Guan Xiu could not help but frown. They could not tell what was so special about the bow. However, in the next moment, the Palace of Death's custodian, Niezue's reaction stunned all of the Saint Land disciples present on the scene, including the 4 of them. "Why, you're really going to pawn this bow with me?" Not only was Niezue not enraged when he held the lousy bow in the eyes of the Saint Land disciples, but he even looked at Duan Lingtian excitedly. In the eyes of the others, it was obvious that he had lost his composure. The reason Niezue was so excited was none other than the fact that he discovered the bow in his hand was not ordinary. He had only weighed the bow a few times before he discovered that although its strength was not as strong as 100 inscription saint weapon, it was not too far off. Naturally, Niezue would not care if it was a saint weapon that was not as strong as 100 inscription saint weapon. After all, even 100 inscription saint weapon was nothing to him. The reason he valued this bow was because he discovered there were only a few low-grade saint inscriptions inscribed on the bowstring. It could not even be considered a 10 inscription saint weapon. With the strength of this bow, it's not difficult for it to withstand a bowstring inscribed with a few hundred saint inscriptions. Niezue had already tested it earlier. Even when he circulated the powerful saint origin in his body, he could not bend the body of the bow in his hand at all. Based on this, one could see how rare and precious the material used to forge this bow was. Even if it's just a bowstring inscribed with a few hundred saint inscriptions, its strength is still stronger than most 1,000 inscription saint weapons. Niezue was 100% sure of this. Just now, when he was testing the bow in his hand, he also discovered that the bow contained a mysterious power. Although the bowstring of this bow was made from the tendons of a 5-clawed divine dragon, it was only inscribed with a few low-grade saint inscriptions. Regardless of the body of the bow, its strength was only slightly stronger than an ordinary 10 inscriptions saint weapon. The reason the strength of this bow was comparable to 100 inscriptions saint weapon was due to the mysterious energy in it. Elder Niezue, this bow is not bad, right? I obtained this when I obtained the legacy left behind by the 9-clawed divine dragon. If it weren't for the fact that I'm on the brink of death today, I wouldn't have taken it out so easily. Duan Lingtian said. It's not just not bad. When Niezue heard Duan Lingtian's bow was left behind by the 9-clawed divine dragon, his eyes lit up even more. At the same time, he said readily, "All right. How many contribution points do you want?" 200,000 contribution points is enough, Duan Lingtian said. At the same time, he took out his crystal card and passed it to Niezue. Niezue took Duan Lingtian's crystal card and transferred 200,000 contribution points to Duan Lingtian without hesitation. At the same time, he could not help but exclaim, "Now, I really hope you'll be killed by Yangwen. If that's the case, your bao will be mine." In Nie Zue's opinion, it was worth it to exchange 200,000 contribution points for a saint weapon that was even more powerful than 1,000 inscriptions saint weapon. In Zoroastrianism, an ordinary 1,000 inscriptions saint weapon would cost 1 million contribution points to exchange for. Moreover, it was usually priceless. Even for the most outstanding saint inscription master in the upper province of the Dao martial saint land, inscribing 1,000 inscriptions saint weapon was a skill that required a lot of effort. The deal between Duan Lingtian and Nie Zue was completed in just a blink of an eye. Whoosh! It was only when Duan Lingtian took the 200,000 contribution points Nie Zue transferred to him and went to the palace of Death's bronze flame elder to bet on himself that the group of Saint Land disciples around the death arena finally regained their senses. As soon as they regained their senses, an uproar broke out. "200,000 contribution points. Are you kidding me? That lousy bao is worth 200,000 contribution points? Lousy bao? You actually think the bao left behind by the nine-clawed divine dragon is a lousy bao? What a joke!" No wonder Elder Nie Zue was so agitated earlier. As it turns out, he could see how extraordinary the bao is. It seems like this bao is indeed left behind by the nine-clawed divine dragon. Humph. This Duan Lingtian is crazy. He actually didn't use the weapon left behind by the nine-clawed divine dragon in the death arena. Instead, he used it to exchange for contribution points. What a gambler. The Saint Land disciples present on the scene did not believe Duan Lingtian's words. However, they still believed in Nie Zue's judgment. From now on, stop placing bets. At the same time, after Duan Lingtian bet 200,000 contribution points on himself, the Palace of Death's bronze flame elder's voice resonated in the air. Everyone present on the scene was shocked. Chapter 1997. Soon after, the Palace of Death's bronze flame elder calculated the odds for today's death duel in the Palace of Death. 7, 1 on Yangwen winning. 1, 7 on Duan Lingtian winning. Soon after, one of the Palace of Death's bronze flame elder announced loudly. His voice resonated in the Palace of Death's ears. In other words, if Yangwen was the one who survived today, they would receive 1 contribution point for every 7 contribution points they bet on Yangwen. On the other hand, if Duan Lingtian was the one who survived, they would receive 7 contribution points for every 1 contribution point they bet on Duan Lingtian. More than 300,000 contribution points have already been bet on Duan Lingtian, and the odds are still so exaggerated. Doesn't this mean more than 1 million contribution points have been bet on senior brother Yangwen? Many Saint Land disciples were stunned when they learned about the odds from the Palace of Death's bronze flame elder. Isn't this too much? It seems like everyone thinks highly of senior brother Yangwen. I'm starting to regret betting 2,000 contribution points on senior brother Yangwen. Most of the elders in the Palace of Death have also bet a lot of contribution points on senior brother Yangwen. That's for sure. Otherwise, we wouldn't have bet more than 2,100,000 contribution points on senior martial brother Yangwen. No matter what, most of the Saint Land's disciples who placed their bets on Yang when were satisfied with the current odds. Duan Lingtian, do you need this bao in your death duel with Yangwen? If you do, I can lend you this bao temporarily. After all, I'll have to return this bao to you if you survive. If you don't survive, it won't be too late for me to take this bao back from you. When Duan Lingtian returned to the death arena to confront Yangwen, Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, who had already arrived in the air above the death arena, asked as he looked at Duan Lingtian. Upon hearing this, most of the Holy Land disciples turned to look at Duan Lingtian. As expected of the number 1 silver flame elder of Zoroastrianism, Elder Nie Zue's courage is truly admirable. That's right. Now that Duan Lingtian's bao was in Elder Duan Lingtian's hands as collateral, it was considered Elder Nie Zue's personal property for the time being. Even if Duan Lingtian wanted to borrow it, he could refuse. Who would have thought that at this critical moment, before Duan Lingtian could speak, he would take the initiative to lend the bow to Duan Lingtian. That bow is a saint weapon left behind by a 9-clawed divine dragon. If Duan Lingtian uses it to fight senior brother Yang Wen in a death duel, perhaps he'll be able to last for a long time before being killed by senior brother Yang Wen. Most of the Saint Land disciples whispered among themselves. They felt that even if Duan Lingtian used the sun shooting bow, he would not be a match for Yang Wen. Naturally, some of the Saint Land disciples were worried as well. All of them were worried. If Duan Lingtian used the bow left behind by the 9-clawed divine dragon, wouldn't his strength rise to another level? At that time, wouldn't senior brother Yang Wen be in danger? The moment they thought of this, they began to cause a commotion again. Since you have the guts to pawn the bow left behind by the 9-clawed divine dragon, you should have the guts not to use it. Don't forget that you've already pawned it. If you're a man, don't use that bow. Duan Lingtian, don't make us look down on you. For the sake of their contribution points, these Saint Land disciples threw caution to the wind and said whatever they could think of. However, they soon realized they wasted quite a bit of their saliva. But Duan Lingtian, on the other hand, did not listen to them at all. Immediately, they were so angry that they wanted to vomit blood. Regardless of the commotion caused by the Holy Land's disciples who had bet on Yang Wen maintained a calm expression on his face. He was not affected by Nie Zue's offer to lend the bow to Duan Lingtian. Other than Duan Lingtian himself, he knew Duan Lingtian better than anyone else present. Because of this, he knew that Duan Lingtian was an expert in the sword and not the bow. Perhaps Duan Lingtian's bow was not bad. However, if he was stronger when it came to using a bow, why did he not use a bow when he fought with Hong Su, the great senior brother of the Black Turtle Sanctum, in the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine? In addition, Duan Lingtian's advanced offensive god art was a sword-type god art. This he also knew. For this reason, Yang Wen was almost certain. Even if Duan Lingtian's bow was left behind by the 9-clawed divine dragon, it would not be of much help to Duan Lingtian, since Duan Lingtian was not an expert in using a bow. As it turned out, Yang Wen was right. Thank you for your kindness, Elder Nie Zue. However, I'm not an expert in using a bow. Duan Lingtian politely declined Nie Zue's kindness. At the same time, he realized Nie Zue, who was also not an expert in using a bow, would not covet the sun shooting bow. Even if Nie Zue was tempted by the sun shooting bow after discovering how extraordinary it was, Nie Zue was not an expert in using a bow. However, since Nie Zue was not skilled in using a bow, and he was the first Silver Flame Elder of the Fire Worship sect who valued his reputation, it was impossible for him to covet a bow that he might not even need in front of so many people. For this reason, Duan Lingtian was willing to take out the sun shooting bow and pawn it in Nie Zue's hands. If it was someone else, he might not have dared to do this. No wonder Duan Lingtian would pawn the treasured bow left behind by the 9-clawed divine dragon. As it turns out, he's not an expert in using a bow. At the same time, the group of Saint Land disciples finally understood. Many Saint Land disciples who had placed heavy bets on Yang Wen could not help but heave a sigh of relief. However, the sun shooting bow that the group of Saint Land disciples called a broken bow had now become a treasured bow. The change in their attitude toward the sun shooting bow was not small at all. All of this was naturally due to Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, acknowledging the sun shooting bow. Naturally, apart from Duan Lingtian, everyone present on the scene, including Nie Zue, did not know that the seemingly broken bow in Nie Zue's hands was the sun shooting bow. From the beginning until the end, Duan Lingtian did not introduce it at all. The reason he did not introduce it was because Duan Lingtian did not think it was necessary. In his opinion, the sun shooting bow would not stay in Nie Zue's hands for long. It would return to him very soon. In the death arena, Duan Lingtian and Yang Wen stood facing each other as they prepared to make their move. Duan Lingtian was an ordinary elite disciple in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. He had just joined the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism not long ago, and could be considered as a new disciple. Yang Wen was a true disciple in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. He had been in the saint land of Zoroastrianism for many years and was considered a senior disciple. These two people were going to sign a death pact in the Palace of Death in the saint land of Zoroastrianism. Let's begin. As Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, spoke, the atmosphere in the entire place was instantly ignited. All of the Saint Land disciples' attention was focused on the death arena as they stared at the two people standing on it. It's finally going to begin. Most of the Saint Land disciples' hearts skipped a beat as an expression of anticipation appeared on their faces. Senior Brother Yongwon, you can do it. Kill Duan Lingtian. Senior Brother Yongwon, I've bet 5,000 contribution points on you. Don't disappoint me. Senior Brother Yongwon, kill him. Kill him. Many of the Saint Land disciples stood up. Their eyes were bloodshot as they continued to shout. It was as though Duan Lingtian was the murderer of their fathers. These Saint Land disciples were the ones who had bet heavily on Yongwon. If Yongwon killed Duan Lingtian, it would mean that they would be able to reap a lot of contribution points today. For this reason, they were more concerned about the outcome of this battle than anyone else. Junior Brother Lingtian. Sunda, who was sitting in the corner of the spectator seat, sighed as he retracted his gaze. He could not bear to watch the next scene. In his opinion, it was impossible for Duan Lingtian to be a match for Yongwon. Senior Brother Lingtian, you can do it. Guanxiu stared at Duan Lingtian as he waved his fist and cheered for Duan Lingtian. Unfortunately, even though his voice wasn't there, it was completely drowned out by the endless voices cheering for Yongwon. He seemed to be isolated and helpless. Brother Mu, apart from himself, nobody thinks highly of him. Why do you think so highly of him? You even asked me to bet my contribution points on him? There were only two people sitting in the spectator seats with an excellent view. One of them asked the other. The person who asked the question was none other than the true disciple, Lu Yun. He was also ranked 27th on the true ranking of Zoroastrianism. The person he asked was Lu Mu, who had just arrived at the Saint Land from the White Tiger Sanctum. I believe in him. Lu Mu's answer was simple and straightforward when faced with Lu Yun's question. Lu Yun was rendered speechless for a moment. He felt Lu Mu was a little too blind. At this moment, Lu Yun even regretted listening to Lu Mu and betting all his 100,000 contribution points on Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, I didn't expect you to sign a death duel pact with me. I really admire your courage. I really have to thank you for giving me a chance to avenge my brother. Yongwon said as he looked at Duan Lingtian coldly when Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, announced the start of the duel. As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful energy surged out of his body. Boom! 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 The energy from Yongwon's body surged out, causing the surrounding space to ripple and set off a gust of wind. It was as though heaven and earth would change color. The energy that surged out of Yongwon's body was not the saint energy. It was the saint origin of a saint celestial stage powerhouse. The saint celestial stage was divided into 9 forms. The first form of the saint celestial stage was the saint origin form. When one's cultivation base had broken through to the first form of the saint celestial stage, it meant the saint energy in one's body had transformed into the more powerful saint origin. Compared to the saint energy. Chapter 1998. Devouring Tactic. Almost at the same time as the energy in Yongwon's body surged out, Duan Lingtian's sun saint energy that had been accumulating in his body also surged out. In just a blink of an eye, a whirlpool appeared with his body as the center. The speed of the whirlpool was getting faster and faster. A powerful suction force swept out from the whirlpool, as a gigantic beast the size of a mountain opened its mouth and sucked in all the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings. Boom! 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 When Duan Lingtian used the devouring tactic, the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings was being sucked in by him. The heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings surged rapidly, causing a series of muffled explosions to reverberate in the air. In terms of commotion, it was not inferior to the commotion caused by Yongwon's powerful saint origin surging out of his body. Assist-type divine ability? Yongwon, who was standing far away, watched as Duan Lingtian devoured all the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings. He saw how Duan Lingtian's saint energy rose from the peak of the exemplary saint stage to the intermediate quintessential saint stage in such a short time. Yang Wen's eyes widened in shock. Such a ridiculous boost had far surpassed the divine ability in the Azure Dragon Sanctum, one of the 4 symbol sanctums. Most importantly, he could still hear Duan Lingtian's words. Duan Lingtian's assist-type divine ability could last for a long time. It was much longer than an ordinary assist-type divine ability. However, saint energy that's only comparable to an intermediate quintessential saint stage powerhouse is nothing in front of me. It's not even worth mentioning. The moment Yang Wen thought of this, his confidence soared. Naturally, Yang Wen did not make the first move even though his confidence had soared. This was because he knew Duan Lingtian's strength was not as simple as an intermediate quintessential saint stage powerhouse. After all, Hong Su, whose strength was close to the saint celestial stage after consuming the forbidden pill, had died in Duan Lingtian's hands. Although Duan Lingtian's true strength was not at the saint celestial stage yet, he was only half a step away. If this was a normal spar, he would choose to make the first move when facing an opponent who was almost impossible to be his opponent. However, because this was a battle of life and death, even if he did not think that Duan Lingtian was no match for him, he still had to face it calmly. Because this was a matter of life and death, he had to be cautious. This is the Duan Lingtian's support-type divine ability? At the same time, everyone, including the custodian of the Palace of Death, Niezue, and the other 3 bronze flame elders, shifted their attention to Duan Lingtian. They witnessed with their own eyes how the whirlpool that had merged with Duan Lingtian's body had absorbed all the heaven and earth spirit energy in the surroundings in just a short period of time. Not only that, but it had also raised Duan Lingtian's saint energy to the intermediate quintessential saint stage. What a terrifying boost. In just a blink of an eye, the aura of Duan Lingtian's saint energy has been raised from the peak of the exemplary saint stage to the intermediate quintessential saint stage. Although I've heard about the high-grade support-type divine ability Duan Lingtian mastered, it's still shocking to see it with my own eyes. That's right. Even the support-type divine ability from the Azure Dragon Sanctum, one of the 4 symbols sanctums of Zoroastrianism, wouldn't have such a ridiculous boost even if it was fully comprehended. This is a leap of 1 stage, and it's a boost of 1 stage. Let's not talk about the support-type divine ability from the Azure Dragon Sanctum. Even the number 1 support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism is only at this level if it's fully comprehended. If that's the case, doesn't this support-type divine ability that Duan Lingtian mastered is comparable to the number 1 support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism? Theoretically, yes. The Saint Land disciples in the spectator seats around the death arena had a solemn expression on their faces. Based on their words, they had a high opinion of Duan Lingtian's support-type divine ability. If Duan Lingtian hasn't fully comprehended the support-type divine ability that he's currently using, doesn't that mean his support-type divine ability is more powerful than the number 1 support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism? A Saint Land disciple in the spectator seats suddenly said. His words caused the expressions of the Saint Land disciples in the surroundings to turn solemn immediately. If there's still room for improvement in the support-type divine ability that he's using, it's indeed more powerful than the number 1 support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism. That's right. The only way he can improve his support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism is if he has fully comprehended the number 1 support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism. If there's still room for improvement in his support-type divine ability, it's indeed more powerful than the number 1 support-type divine ability in Zoroastrianism. If there's still room for improvement in his support-type divine ability, then even if his support-type divine ability is not as good as Zhuangzi Buddhism's support-type divine ability, I'm afraid it's not too far off. As the group of Saint Land disciples discussed among themselves, they brought up one of Zhuangzi Buddhism's support-type divine abilities. In the upper province of the Tao Martial Saint Land, the 3 great sects were 3 behemoths. They were great evils that stood above all the other forces. Each of the three great sects had many high-grade divine abilities, but each of them had their own strengths. For example, the most powerful divine ability in the Zoroastrianism was an offensive divine ability. That offensive divine ability was also known as the number one divine ability in Zoroastrianism. It was also the most treasured divine ability in Zoroastrianism. Another example was Zhuangzi Buddhism. The most powerful divine ability was an assist-type divine ability. It was also the most treasured divine ability in Zhuangzi Buddhism. When that assist-type divine ability was fully comprehended, it could raise a person's cultivation base by a whole stage in a short time. What did it mean by a whole stage? In other words, if Duan Lingtian cast it, his sun saint energy, that was equivalent to the saint energy, at the peak of the exemplary saint stage, would be raised to the saint energy, at the peak of the quintessential saint stage in a short time. Due to this reason, the group of Saint Lan disciples compared this assist-type divine ability in Zhuangzi Buddhism. As for the last sect, the Heaven Divination sect, their most powerful divine ability was a defensive divine ability. It was also the most treasured divine ability in the Heaven Divination sect. Compared to the treasured divine abilities in Zoroastrianism and Zhuangzi Buddhism, the treasured divine ability in the Heaven Divination sect was the most famous. This was because it was an ancient defensive divine ability that had been passed down since ancient times. It had already existed before the three great sects appeared in the Tao martial Saint Land. That divine ability was also widely acknowledged as the number one defensive divine ability in the Tao martial Saint Land. Whoosh! As a soft sound resonated in the air, under the watchful eyes of the others, the air within a 100-meter radius around Yangwen began to ripple. In the end, it formed a territory that was filled with murderous aura. One could vaguely see blood-red energy lingering in the air. Whoosh! Whoosh! Not only that, but above Yangwen's head, a vast amount of Saint Qi had also appeared out of nowhere and split into two. It transformed into a long spear and a gigantic ape. The long spear was more than 30 meters long while the gigantic ape stood in the air like a mountain. If it was outside, it would be able to blot out the sun. Saint Origin Consolidated Weapon? Saint Origin Consolidated Beast? Upon seeing this, Duan Lingtian could not help but be stunned. In his opinion, this was a very low-level technique. It was similar to the leveling up of the True Energy Consolidated Weapon and True Energy Consolidated Beast. Usually, the True Energy Consolidated Beast and True Energy Consolidated Territory were the three great techniques that a martial or Tao cultivator mastered in the early days. Among them, the True Energy Consolidated Territory was the only technique that could accompany them for a long time. Naturally, it was only the furthest they could go. This was because later on, as one's martial arts techniques improved further, as well as the appearance of various divine abilities, even the condensed domain of vital energy would gradually weaken. Combine. However, as soon as Yangwen shouted, Duan Lingtian's eyes widened again. His expression turned solemn. The gigantic ape that was the size of a mountain that was formed by the Saint Origin Consolidated Beast above Yangwen's head suddenly came to life. It extended its right arm and grabbed the long spear that was more than 30 meters long. After the long spear landed in its hand, the gigantic ape's sturdy body trembled. Then it extended its other hand and punched its chest. Dong! 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 Ow! Without warning, the gigantic ape opened its mouth and roared. Its voice was like a clap of thunder as it tore through the air. Some of the Saint Land disciples with low cultivation base could not help but frown. At the same time, under everyone's watchful eyes, with Yangwen as the center, the territory that was filled with murderous aura within a 100-meter radius transformed into a blood-red torrent that surged toward the gigantic ape. It entered the gigantic ape's body through its bloody mouth. It looked as though the gigantic ape had swallowed Yangwen's territory. After the domain was completely devoured by the giant ape, there were no substantial changes to the giant ape's body. However, around its body and around the spear in its hand, strands of blood-red aura rose again. They were like blood-red lightning, constantly twining around its body and flashing about. Apart from that, its originally dim eyes had also turned bloodshot at this moment. In just a blink of an eye, the aura on the gigantic ape's body had undergone a drastic change. Not only was it filled with murderous aura, but it also exuded an extremely dangerous aura. At the very least, Duan Lingtian had such a feeling. It's the intermediate grade offensive divine ability, the Three Flowers Congregation. At the same time, Duan Lingtian heard the exclamations of many Saint Land disciples in the spectator seats. Soon after, from the exclamations of the Holy Land's disciples, he realized that Yang Wen had cast a mid-grade offensive divine ability. This offensive divine ability relied on the most basic techniques: the True Energy Consolidated Weapon, the True Energy Consolidated Beast, and the True Energy Consolidated Territory. Naturally, the Saint Origin Consolidated Weapon, the Saint Origin Consolidated Beast, and the Saint Origin Consolidated Territory were cast by Yang Wen. The intermediate grade offensive divine ability, the Three Flowers Congregation, focused on combining the three techniques before launching an attack. This offensive divine ability was one of the best among all the middle grade offensive divine abilities. Kill him! All of a sudden Yang Wen shouted. In the next moment, the gigantic ape hovering in the air above Yang Wen seemed to possess intelligence. Its blood-red eyes suddenly lit up as it stepped out obediently. Chapter 1999. Boom! The gigantic ape that was the size of a small mountain with a long spear in his hand, that was shrouded in blood-red energy, made a deafening sound when he took a step forward. Boom! 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 Following that, the gigantic ape charged toward Duan Lingtian at a charging speed. Every step it took caused the air to explode. The series of loud noises shook the Saint Land disciples around the death arena, causing their expressions to turn grave. It was as though the gigantic ape was stepping on their chests with every step it took. Just in time, Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes as he faced the gigantic ape that was charging toward him menacingly. In just a blink of an eye, his body began to undergo an earth-shattering transformation. Naturally, in the eyes of the Saint Land disciples around the death arena, Duan Lingtian had only transformed into his hands and feet that were exposed outside of the Saint Land disciple uniform. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's hands and feet had transformed into 4 dragon claws. After a few moments, the dragon scales that appeared on Duan Lingtian's skin thickened, and the Saint Land disciple uniform on his body was torn apart. The dragon scales that shone with a cold black light finally appeared before everyone's eyes. It also allowed everyone to see Duan Lingtian, who had transformed into a dragon warrior. All of this happened in just a blink of an eye. It was so fast that everyone could not react in time. Their attention was completely attracted by Duan Lingtian's 4 dragon claws. Each of the 4 dragon claws had 9 claws that gleamed with a cold light. A humanoid dragon body with 9 claws. It was as though it was telling the people around him about his extraordinary identity. He was a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Golden Crow's wings. As soon as Duan Lingtian transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, a pair of wings that burned with flames shot out from his back. It appeared before everyone's eyes like a burning cloud in the sky. Whoosh! A sword appeared on the dragon claw in Duan Lingtian's right hand. Duan Lingtian. As soon as Duan Lingtian took out the sword, Yang Wen, who was standing in the distance, narrowed his eyes. His voice was filled with anger and hatred. This was because he recognized the sword in Duan Lingtian's hand. It was none other than his younger brother, Yang Wu's 100 Inscriptions Saint Sword. In the next moment, Yang Wen's face turned red as he moved his hands and feet. Meanwhile, the gigantic ape that was charging at Duan Lingtian began to follow Yang Wen's movements. Strangely, it began to synchronize with Yang Wen's movements as well. It was as if Yang Wen had taken control of the giant ape in an instant, as if it was his own arm. Die! Under the gazes of the crowd, the giant ape opened its mouth and actually uttered human words. It let out a roar of anger and hatred. It was Yang Wen's voice. At this moment, Yang Wen seemed to have possessed the body of the giant ape, as he charged toward Duan Lingtian with his spear. Without warning, the crimson light in the eyes of the gigantic ape that was controlled by Yang Wen grew even more intense. At the same time, the muscles on the gigantic ape's right arm began to bulge. It was more than twice as thick as before. Whoosh! In the next moment, as the gigantic ape swung its right arm, the 30-meter-long spear in its hand seemed to have transformed into a crimson bolt of lightning that shot toward Duan Lingtian. Boom! 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 The lightning that was entwined with blood-red light was extremely thick. It was as thick as an adult's thigh. Wherever it passed, it caused space to tremble and set off waves of deafening noises. It was as if the sky was about to be pierced through by this spear. Upon seeing this, the Saint Lan's disciples, who were shocked by Duan Lingtian's transformation into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, could not help but hold their breaths. They watched intently, as though they were afraid they would miss out on any exciting scene. Just in time. In the face of the gigantic ape's spear that had transformed into a bolt of lightning, the battle intent in Duan Lingtian's eyes soared. As he shouted, he tightened his grip on the 100 inscriptions Saint sword in his hand. Moreover, the flames on the golden crow's wings on his back seemed to have frozen for a moment. All of a sudden, the golden crow's wings on Duan Lingtian's back suddenly flapped, and 2 balls of flames shot out instantly. It was as though a prairie fire was set ablaze as it struck the air. Boom! 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 At once, a series of deafening explosions reverberated in the air. It was so loud that it even overshadowed the commotion caused by the gigantic ape's spear that was being controlled by Yang Wen. Whoosh! As the golden crow's wings flapped violently, Duan Lingtian's entire body seemed to have transformed into a huge fireball as well. He was like a meteorite that fell from the sky and collided with the menacing giant ape. The gigantic ape's spear swept over at a very fast speed, but Duan Lingtian's speed was even faster. When Duan Lingtian's body was about to collide with the gigantic ape, the spear that was charging toward him brushed past him. As he brushed past the spear, Duan Lingtian could even hear a slight but ear-piercing sound produced by the friction between the spear and the air. Scram! The gigantic ape opened its mouth and roared. The spear in its hand swept toward Duan Lingtian, who was getting close to it. It wanted to send Duan Lingtian flying. Duan Lingtian was only 1.8 meters tall. In front of the 30-meter-long spear, he seemed extremely small. If he was hit by the spear, he would definitely be sent flying. At that time, even if he did not die or become disabled, he would definitely be severely injured. Boom! 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 At the moment when the spear in the giant ape's hand swept out, Duan Lingtian made his choice in a flash of lightning. He flapped his golden crow's wings abruptly and swept toward the body of the spear that was smashing toward him. Clang! 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 With 3 soft sounds, Duan Lingtian was already on top of the spear. His 3 sharp dragon claws were nailed to the spear, leaving only 1 dragon claw holding the 100 inscriptions sacred sword. Even though Duan Lingtian had chosen to land on top of the spear at the fastest speed, before the spear's power was fully unleashed, he still felt a violent tremor throughout his body. Even though the 9-clawed dragon warrior's strong body had neutralized the power, his internal organs were still in turmoil. Wah! Duan Lingtian spat out a mouthful of congested blood that was half black and half red. Duan Lingtian's face alternated between green and white. Die! Seeing that Duan Lingtian had actually stuck to the spear so decisively, the gigantic ape opened its mouth and let out a furious roar. Then, it charged toward the death arena at lightning speed. When it got close to the death arena, the spear in its hand shook, and it actually smashed the death arena with the spear. Now that Duan Lingtian was sticking to the spear, once the spear fell to the ground, he would be heavily smashed into the death arena. Golden crow's wings. Duan Lingtian naturally would not sit still and wait for his death. When the gigantic ape raised its spear and smashed it into the death arena, he once again used his body movement divine ability to dodge to the side. Almost as soon as he dodged, the spear in the gigantic ape's hand finally smashed into the death arena. Bang! With a loud bang, a deep crack appeared on the death arena. Especially where the tip of the spear landed, it left behind a hideous gap. How powerful! The death arena is made of a special material. Even a powerhouse at the peak of the quintessential saint stage wouldn't be able to leave a mark on it. However, Senior brother Yang Wen's attack actually caused a crack and a gap to appear. As expected of a powerhouse at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage, senior brother Yang Wen is really powerful. The group of Saint Lan disciples in the spectator seats finally had the chance to speak up. The moment they spoke, all of them praised Yang Wen's strength. However, Duan Lingtian's speed isn't slow as well. That's right. He managed to dodge the spear that the gigantic ape controlled by senior brother Yang Wen shot out. Nobody below the Saint Celestial stage can compare to his speed. I've long heard that Duan Lingtian's movement divine ability is even more powerful than the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's most treasured movement divine ability. Now that I've seen it for myself, it really lives up to its reputation. After a while, many Saint Lan disciples were amazed by the movement divine ability, the Golden Crow's wings, that Duan Lingtian had cast. Duan Lingtian's strength is really not bad. At the same time, even Lu Yin could not help but praise Duan Lingtian. Brother Yin, I told you he's not simple. Lu Mu, who was sitting next to Lu Yin, raised an eyebrow. He felt proud. After all, Lu Yin did not think highly of Duan Lingtian at all. It's too early to be happy. However, Lu Yin poured a bucket of cold water on Lu Mu. Up until now, Yang Wen has only cast one medium-grade offensive divine ability. Although his medium-grade offensive divine ability, the Three Flowers Consolidation, is already one of the best medium-grade offensive divine abilities. However, as far as I know, he has also mastered another high-grade movement divine ability. However, this high-grade movement divine ability can only be cast by his true body. The gigantic ape before us is merely a clone formed by his medium-grade offensive divine ability, the Three Flowers Consolidation. Although it's strong, it's not his true strength. Lu Yun's words hit the nail on the head. Upon hearing Lu Yun's words, even Lu Mu, who was confident in Duan Lingtian, could not help but have a grave expression on his face. Moreover, Yang Wen is a true disciple after all. He might have some hidden techniques. Even if he doesn't, as the son of the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect, he must have something that can save his life at a critical moment. For example, a forbidden pill. Lu Yin continued to say. Earlier, he had learned about Yang Wen's other identity from the Saint Lan disciples in the spectator seats. Yang Wen was the son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect. Forbidden pill. Lu Mu's expression changed again when he heard Lu Yun's words. If Yang Wen, who was at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage, consumed a forbidden pill, would he not be able to raise his strength to the second form of the Saint Celestial stage in a short time? Lu Mu had reason to believe that. If Yang Wen had taken the forbidden pill from Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect, he would definitely be able to raise his strength by so much. If that's all Duan Lingtian has, it's impossible for him to be a match for Yang Wen. However, when he asked me to pawn this bow, I could faintly feel a strong sense of confidence from him. Nie Zui, the custodian of the Palace of Death, could not help but fall into deep thought as he looked at the seemingly broken bow in his hand and Duan Lingtian. Chapter 2000. While Nie Zui was deep in his thoughts, Duan Lingtian made his move as well. Net. Duan Lingtian's eyes turned cold when he saw the giant ape controlled by Yang Wen smashing its spear on the death arena. He activated the Golden Crow's wings and charged toward the giant ape. This was the moment when the giant ape's defense was at its weakest. Boom! 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 The Golden Crow's wings flapped violently again, causing the air to tremble and explode. However, the Saint Lan disciples around the death arena were not paying attention to the commotion caused by the Golden Crow's wings. Their eyes were focused on Duan Lingtian, transcendent flying celestial. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian arrived near the giant ape at an extremely fast speed. With just a flash, he actually conjured 4 clones that were indistinguishable. Whoosh! 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 Including the original Duan Lingtian, a total of 5 Duan Lingtians attacked the giant ape with their swords in unison. The 5 swords did not only contain the high-grade divine ability, the transcendent flying celestial, but it also contained the profundity of the sovereign heart sword that Duan Lingtian had comprehended. At this moment, Duan Lingtian had already comprehended the third stage of the sovereign heart sword. Due to this reason, the power he displayed when he wielded the sword was not something that could be compared to before. The 5 swords pierced through the air and landed on the giant ape when it raised its spear to counterattack. 5 holes instantly appeared on the giant ape's body. You think you can destroy my giant ape clone with just 5 swords? What a joke! Although there were 5 holes on the giant ape's body, its movement and strength were not affected at all. It even had the time to mock Duan Lingtian. Naturally, the person who spoke was Yang Wen. Who told you there are only 5 swords? Almost as soon as Yang Wen finished speaking, the 5 Duan Lingtian sneered in unison. Due to Duan Lingtian's sneer, the giant ape that Yang Wen controlled slowed down slightly. However, he quickly recovered and stood with his spear horizontally, assuming a defensive posture. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, the 100 inscriptions saint swords in the hands of the 5 Duan Lingtian suddenly disappeared under the watchful eyes of the crowd. It was as though he had put them away. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. However, the buzzing of the sword told them that Duan Lingtian did not put away his 100 inscriptions sacred sword. Gone. Almost at the same time as the buzzing sounds of swords rang out, the group of Holy Land disciples in the spectator seats around the death arena stood up in shock. This was because they could hear the sound of swords whistling in their ears, but they couldn't see a single sword shadow. Even Lu Yin could not help but narrow his eyes. What a terrifying imperial sword technique! Among the people present on the scene, apart from the few elders from the Palace of Death, Lu Yin was the most powerful. Although the group of Holy Land disciples present on the scene could only hear the sound of swords whistling, it did not mean Lu Yin could not see it. However, Lu Yin could only vaguely see the sword shadows, but he could not capture any of them. The speed of the sword shadows sent chills down his spine. It was too fast. Even if he unleashed his full strength, he might not be able to unleash such a fast attack. This imperial sword technique. At the same time, even the custodian of the Palace of Death, Niezue, and the other 3 bronze flame elders could not help but narrow their eyes. What the 3 bronze flame elders saw was similar to what Lu Yin saw since their strength was on par with each other. However, what Niezue saw was completely different. In Niezue's field of vision, the 500 inscriptions saint swords controlled by Duan Lingtian, with the imperial sword technique, were intertwined at an exaggerated speed, forming a dense sword net that swept toward the giant ape clone controlled by Yang Wen. The speed of the sword shadows that formed the sword net was so fast that even Niezue could not help but feel chills running up his spine. A martial cultivator whose cultivation base was only at the peak of the exemplary saint stage was able to unleash such a terrifying attack. Would he not be heaven-defying if he broke through to the quintessential saint stage, or the saint celestial stage? Unfortunately, he only possesses a yellow innate spiritual root. Heaven is jealous of geniuses. Heaven is jealous of geniuses. The moment Niezue thought of this, he felt it was a pity. Oh no! At the same time, horror dawned on Yang Wen's face. He immediately controlled the giant ape to avoid the sword net formed by Duan Lingtian with the imperial sword technique. Those Saint Land disciples below the Saint Celestial stage present on the scene could not see the 100 inscriptions saint swords controlled by Duan Lingtian with the imperial sword technique. However, it did not mean Yang Wen could not see it. In fact, due to the close distance, he could see it even more clearly than Lu Yin and the 3 bronze flame elders from the Palace of Death. Due to this reason, he chose to avoid it. Trying to avoid it? It's too late. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's cold voice resonated in the air. In the next moment, the sword net formed by the imperial sword technique enveloped the giant ape that was the size of a small mountain and sliced it into tens of thousands of pieces. The giant ape was formed by Yang Wen's saint origin. Now that it was sliced into tens of thousands of pieces, the energy contained in it was also divided into tens of thousands of pieces. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Due to this reason, when the sword net controlled by Duan Lingtian trembled, The tens of thousands of pieces of Saint Origin were destroyed and disappeared from this world. As Yang Wen's giant ape avatar was crushed, Yang Wen's main body, who was standing in the distance, seemed to have suffered a certain degree of backlash. His body suddenly trembled, and then he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale, and he seemed to be in a sorry state. Whoosh! Upon seeing this, an uproar broke out in the crowd. Senior brother Yang Wen's giant ape clone is gone just like that? What technique did Duan Lingtian use? How can it be so fast? I can't even catch a glimpse of it. Me too. Isn't this speed a little too fast? When the group of Saint Land disciples spoke, their voices were filled with shock. From the beginning until the end, they did not see how the giant ape clone was destroyed. All they saw was the giant ape clone being sliced into tens of thousands of pieces. The pieces did not stay in the air for long before they were destroyed. It was as though they were destroyed by an invisible force. Brother Yun, what's going on? Lu Mu sucked in a breath of cold air. Even he did not see clearly what had happened just now. Duan Lingtian has mastered an extremely terrifying sword-wielding technique. I don't know if it's a divine ability or a martial technique. When he wields the sword, the speed of the sword is so fast that even I can't catch a glimpse of it. Lu Yun said with a solemn expression. What? Brother Yun Yin, you can't even catch a glimpse of it? Lu Mu was dumbfounded. Lu Yun was his cousin, and he was very clear about how strong Lu Yun was. Due to this reason he was shocked. Junior brother Ling Tian, it seems like I've underestimated you. Lu Mu had a complicated expression on his face as he looked at Duan Lingtian from afar. Although he had confidence in Duan Lingtian, he did not expect Duan Lingtian would be able to wield the sword so quickly. What kind of sword-wielding technique is that? Yang Wen asked in a deep voice as he looked at Duan Lingtian sharply after he regained his senses. Why do you care what kind of sword-wielding technique it is? Yang Wen, if that's all you've got, you're destined to die in my hands today. Duan Lingtian glanced at Yang Wen indifferently. His tone was exceptionally cold when he spoke. Do you really think you can kill me, Yang Wen, just because you've mastered that sword-wielding technique? How naive. Yang Wen had a disdainful expression on his face when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. The fight earlier was merely a warm-up for me. The real battle has only just begun. I'd like to see if your sword-wielding technique can catch up to my real body. As soon as Yang Wen finished speaking, his body swayed. In just a blink of an eye, he left behind a silhouette on the spot. His real body was already far away. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Every time Yang Wen's figure flashed out, a solidified shadow would appear where he was originally standing, and it did not dissipate for a long time. Phantom scars. Upon seeing this, many disciples from the Holy Lands cried out in surprise. The phantom scars is a movement technique from a heaven-rank prominent saint-grade martial tactic. Based on the phantom scars that senior brother Yang Wen cast, it's obvious he has cultivated it to the highest stage. It's too fast. Not only is his speed fast, but he'll leave behind a silhouette every time he moves to interfere with his opponent's vision. It's said that senior brother Yang Wen has also comprehended a high-grade movement divine ability. When that high-grade movement divine ability is combined with the phantom scars, his speed is not something Duan Lingtian can compare to. That's right. At that time, even if Duan Lingtian cast that sword-wielding technique earlier, he might not be able to catch up to senior brother Yang Wen. As long as senior brother Yang Wen relies on his speed to stall for time, he'll be able to stall until the effect of Duan Lingtian's assist-type divine ability wears off. At that time, Duan Lingtian will be the meat on senior brother Yang Wen's chopping board. The group of Saint Land disciples discussed among themselves. Although Duan Lingtian had destroyed the giant ape clone that Yang Wen had condensed using his intermediate-grade offensive divine ability, the three flowers at one's prominence, they still did not think it was possible for Duan Lingtian to defeat Yang Wen. As you wish. The five Duan Lingtian spoke in unison again. As soon as their voices left their mouths, they surrounded Yang Wen and charged at him. In terms of movement techniques, Yang Wen's speed was not even comparable to Duan Lingtian's, let alone Duan Lingtian's 100 inscriptions Saint Sword. that was controlled by the third stage of the sovereign heart sword, the sword wielding the heart. For this reason, when Duan Lingtian charged at him, Yang Wen instantly cast his movement divine ability. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The movement divine ability that Yang Wen had mastered was called the Wind Spirit Possession. Once he cast it, his entire body would seem to be possessed by a wind spirit. His body would move with the wind, and he would be as fast as the wind. In just a blink of an eye, hundreds of Yang Wen's silhouettes appeared in the sky above the death arena. Moreover, as the 5 Duan Lingtian's figures flashed out, the number of these silhouettes continued to increase. In just a blink of an eye, hundreds of silhouettes appeared. Chapter 2001. So fast! The eyes of the Holy Land's disciples in the spectator seats lit up when they saw thousands of Yang Wen's afterimages appearing in the sky above the death arena. Is this the high-grade movement divine ability, Wind Spirit Possession, that senior brother Yang Wen mastered? At this moment, they could already see the scene of Duan Lingtian's support-type divine ability disappearing, and him being killed by Yang Wen. Senior brother Yang Wen's current speed is even faster than Duan Lingtian's after he uses his high-grade movement divine ability. As expected, there's no suspense in this battle. I'm regretting that I didn't bet more on senior brother Yang Wen. Me too. I only bet 1,000 contribution points. Many of the Holy Land's disciples already felt that Duan Lingtian was bound to lose and die without a doubt. They even began to regret not betting everything on Yang Wen. Now they felt that this was a sure win deal. Yang Wen's speed is already faster than Duan Lingtian's. If Duan Lingtian only has this much skill, I'm afraid he won't be a match for him. Lu Yin muttered as he watched the scene before him with a grave expression. Although 100,000 contribution points was not enough to hurt him, he would still feel a little heartache if they were to disappear just like that. Junior brother Ling Tian definitely has more tricks up his sleeve. Lu Mu's seemingly blind trust in Duan Lingtian caused Lu Yin to involuntarily shake his head. However, he did not open his mouth to attack him. Junior brother Ling Tian, senior brother Ling Tian, whether it was Sunda or Guan Xiu, their hearts were hanging by a thread. They knew the moment Yang Wen used the high-grade movement divine ability, the Wind Spirit Possession, the battle was coming to an end. Either Duan Lingtian wasn't afraid of Yang Wen's speed, which would give him a chance of winning, or Yang Wen could crush Duan Lingtian in terms of speed and stall for time, waiting for the Duan Lingtian's support ability to wear off before killing the Duan Lingtian in one go. In their hearts, they unanimously felt that the second possibility was more likely. It was not that they did not have enough confidence in Duan Lingtian, but that they could not bring themselves to do so. After all, the difference in their foundations was too great. Even if Duan Lingtian cast his assist-type divine ability, his saint energy was only comparable to the saint energy of an intermediate quintessential saint stage martial cultivator. Yang Wen's energy, on the other hand, was the saint origin that was above saint energy. It was an energy exclusive to saint celestial stage powerhouses. The fact that Duan Lingtian was able to force Yang Wen to use his high-grade movement divine ability, Wind Spirit Possession, was already very impressive in their eyes. As for Duan Lingtian defeating or even killing Yang Wen, they did not dare to think about it. Awoo! Another roar reverberated in the air. This time, Yang Wen had expended his saint origin to form another giant ape with a long spear in its hand. Its entire body was shrouded in blood-red energy as it charged toward Duan Lingtian again. Do you think this trick of yours will work on me? Duan Lingtian's indifferent words sounded. In the next moment, everyone present on the scene heard a series of sword whistles that sounded like the buzzing of bees. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. For the group of Saint Land disciples below the Saint Celestial stage, they could only hear the sound of sword whistling. As for the sword shadows, they could not even see a single one, let alone capture it. Under the watchful eyes of the others, the giant ape that Yang Wen condensed using his saint origin to cast his intermediate grade offensive divine ability, Triple Flower Convergence, was once again crushed mercilessly by Duan Lingtian. Die! Before everyone could react to the scene of the giant ape being crushed, Yang Wen's voice had already reverberated in the Palace of Death. In the next moment, the crowd saw Yang Wen's true self had already charged toward Duan Ling Tian, without anyone noticing. Along the way there were hundreds of silhouettes. More than half of the silhouettes behind him had a long spear in their hands. Senior brother Yang Wen has also taken out his 100 inscriptions Saint Spear. Many people's eyes lit up immediately. Whoosh! Seizing the opportunity when Duan Ling Tian was crushing the giant ape with his sword net, Yang Wen cast his movement divine ability, Wind Spirit Possession. It was as though he had transformed into a gust of wind that blew in front of Duan Ling Tian. In just a blink of an eye, the 100 inscriptions Saint Spear in his hand shook as it spun and charged towards Duan Ling Tian. Whoosh! 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 As Yang Wen's Saint origin skyrocketed, the spear that contained the profundity of spear martial tactics shot out, causing the air to emit a sound of friction. The spear that seemed to be assisted by God was aimed at Duan Ling Tian's throat at the best time. A single spear to seal the throat. Too slow. When Yang Wen's spear swept out, Duan Ling Tian did not dodge at all. Instead, he stood on the spot and spat out 3 words with a calm expression on his face. Stop trying to be mysterious. When Yang Wen saw Duan Ling Tian's calm expression, he instinctively felt a little guilty. However, he still shouted as the 100 inscriptions Saint Spear in his hand continued to charge towards Duan Ling Tian's throat. Swoosh! 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 In the next moment, Yang Wen could clearly hear the sound of a sword whistling as it approached him. It was so fast that it was even faster than the speed he displayed previously. It was even faster than the speed he displayed when he combined his movement technique with his high-grade movement technique, Wind Spirit Possession. Immediately, Yang Wen was scared out of his wits. Impossible! How can his sword-wielding art be so fast? At this moment, no matter how Yang Wen roared in his heart, he could not change the fact that if he chose to continue attacking Duan Ling Tian, he would be shrouded by the sword net and torn into pieces. He did not think his defensive technique and divine ability would be able to withstand the sword net that Duan Ling Tian formed with the sword-wielding art. Swoosh! For this reason, Yang Wen immediately stopped attacking Duan Ling Tian. Not only did he stop attacking Duan Ling Tian, but he even used his movement technique and movement divine ability as fast as he could to escape the sword net's range as soon as possible. This was because he felt the sword net was getting closer and closer to him. Swoosh! 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 The sword net seemed to have increased its speed to its maximum. In just a blink of an eye, it had already shrouded the place where Yang Wen was standing in front of Duan Ling Tian. Ah! A heart-wrenching low cry suddenly reverberated in the air. Under the watchful eyes of the others, although Yang Wen chose to dodge immediately, the part of his right thigh below his thigh was still crushed by the sword net, because he was too late to dodge. Blood stained the sky, as though it had transformed into dazzling red roses. It was enchanting and beautiful. However, nobody paid attention to this at this moment. Senior brother Yang Wen's leg is crippled? The group of Saint Land disciples in the spectator seats around the death arena stood up in shock again. All of them looked at Yang Wen, who had lost his leg, in disbelief. At this moment, Yang Wen was hovering in the air in the distance. His face was extremely pale, as he hurriedly stopped the blood from gushing out of his severed leg. However, his eyes were exceptionally cold as he looked at Duan Ling Tian. It was as though the enmity between him and Duan Ling Tian had increased to the maximum at this moment. His sword-wielding art can still be sped up? This time, Lu Yin was so shocked that he stood up immediately. Even he did not expect Duan Ling Tian to increase his speed with the sword-wielding art. Amazing! Lu Mu stood up as well. His eyes shone brightly as he looked at Duan Ling Tian. There was a hint of excitement on his face. What a terrifying sword-wielding art! Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, had a solemn expression on his face at this moment. If his sword-wielding art is a martial tactic, then this sword tactic is definitely qualified to be called the #1 sword tactic in the Dao martial Saint Land. In the past, I've seen many sword-wielding arts from heaven-rank prominent saint-grade martial tactics that have been cultivated to the maximum. However, none of them are comparable to the sword-wielding art he just cast. The other 3 bronze flame elders from the Palace of Death looked at each other and smiled wryly. Are we being too impulsive? We actually bet all our contribution points on Yang Wen. Even if we bet a little on Duan Lingtian, we wouldn't have lost so much. One of the bronze flame elders said with a wry smile. When he saw Duan Lingtian's sword-wielding art had sped up again, and his speed was even faster than Yang Wen's speed when he combined his movement divine ability with his movement technique, he could already see the scene of Yang Wen being defeated and killed. Don't worry, the outcome isn't out yet. Don't forget that Yang Wen hasn't consumed the forbidden pill yet. Another bronze flame elder said as his eyes shone brightly. That's right. As the son of the Northern Plethora sect's 5th elder, Yang Wen must have some life-saving technique in his possession. The forbidden pill is the most direct and straightforward life-saving technique. He must have it. The last bronze flame elder nodded as he looked at Yang Wen. If he's smart, he'll consume the forbidden pill now. If this drags on, he'll be severely injured again, and his strength will be greatly reduced. At that time, he might not be a match for Duan Lingtian, even if he consumes the forbidden pill. However, I really didn't expect Duan Lingtian, a mere martial cultivator at the peak of the exemplary saint stage, would be able to cast such a powerful technique. At this moment, the 3 bronze flame elders looked at Duan Lingtian in unison, with a complicated expression on their faces. One of senior brother Yang Wen's legs is broken. Is he going to lose? How's it possible for Duan Lingtian to be so powerful? How's it possible for him to break one of senior brother Yang Wen's legs? If senior brother Yang Wen loses and dies, won't my contribution points go to waste? That's all my contribution points. Fear and uneasiness filled the hearts of the Saint Lan's disciples who had placed their bets on Yang Wen. At this moment, they were beginning to regret placing such a heavy bet on Yang Wen. Don't panic. Senior brother Yang Wen must still have a trump card that he hasn't used yet. That's right. As the son of the Northern Plethora sect's 5th elder, do you think senior brother Yang Wen doesn't have a life-saving technique? As some of the Saint Lan's disciples spoke, their eyes lit up again. It was as though they had seen hope again. That's the forbidden pill. Suddenly, someone cried out in surprise. Immediately, everyone's eyes fell on Yang Wen. Chapter 2002. Forbidden Pill? Duan Lingtian's expression turned solemn when he heard the exclamations of many Holy Land disciples and saw Yang Wen swallow the pill. Almost at the same moment Yang Wen swallowed the pill, boom! A strange energy swept out from his body and perfectly fused with his Saint Qi before spreading out, causing the void to tremble and deafening explosions to ring out. At that moment, Yang Wen's strength seemed to have increased a lot compared to before. Junior brother Ling Tian, brother Yun said that although Yang Wen's cultivation base is not at the 2nd form of the Saint Celestial stage, his saint origin is comparable to a powerhouse at the 2nd form of the Saint Celestial stage. However, he doesn't have the other characteristics of a powerhouse at the 2nd form of the Saint Celestial stage. Lu Mu's voice rang in Duan Lingtian's ears the moment Yang Wen consumed the forbidden pill, and his strength increased. In terms of saint origin, it's comparable to a powerhouse at the 2nd form of the Saint Celestial stage. Upon hearing Lu Mu's words, Duan Lingtian's expression turned grave. These words were spoken by the true disciple, Lu Yin, so he did not doubt the authenticity of these words at all. He could understand why Lu Yin said Yang Wen's current cultivation base was not at the 2nd form of the Saint Celestial stage. As far as he knew, breaking through from the 1st form of the Saint Celestial stage to the 2nd form of the Saint Celestial stage would not only increase one's saint origin, but there would also be some changes that were unique to powerhouses at the 2nd form of the Saint Celestial stage. That was something that forbidden pills could not achieve. Forbidden pills could only increase a person's strength. After taking a forbidden pill, his Saint Qi has increased by an entire level. The forbidden pill he took isn't inferior to the one Hong Su took that day. Duan Lingtian was certain of this. At the same time, the custodian of the Palace of Death, Niezue, and the other 3 bronze flame elders were shocked by Yang Wen's improvement after he consumed the forbidden pill. They didn't expect Yang Wen's forbidden pills to be of such a high grade. Yang Wen's saint origin has increased by an entire level. Duan Lingtian is doomed. Duan Lingtian's imperial sword technique might be fast, but he can't be faster than Yang Wen after he consumed the forbidden pill. Unless he has some other trump card. Otherwise he'll definitely die. The 3 bronze flame elders from the Palace of Life and Death looked at each other and whispered to each other. They all felt that there was no doubt about the result of today's battle. Yang Wen would definitely win, and Duan Lingtian would lose. Senior brother Yang Wen's saint origin has risen by a whole level. At the same time, a young man from the Holy Land muttered in a corner of the spectator stands around the death arena. His tone was filled with surprise. Senior brother Cha Jin, did you just say that? Senior brother Yang Wen's Saint Chi has improved by an entire level? Another Saint Land disciple exclaimed in surprise. You mean senior brother Yang Wen's saint origin has already risen to the level of a powerhouse at the second form of the Saint Celestial stage? He believed in the words of the senior brother Cha Jin beside him. This was because he knew this senior brother Cha Jin was one of the best among the elite disciples in the Saint Land. Moreover, his cultivation base was almost at the Saint Celestial stage, and he was publicly acknowledged as one of the people who had the highest chance of becoming a true disciple. Meanwhile, Cha Jin's words had also spread in the surroundings and shocked the other Saint Land disciples. After consuming the forbidden pill, senior brother Yang Wen's saint origin has risen to the second form of the Saint Celestial stage. Isn't this too exaggerated? It seems like the forbidden pill senior brother Yang, when consumed, is really extraordinary, to be able to raise a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse's cultivation base so much. Is it true? Senior brother Cha Jin said so. It shouldn't be false. Senior brother Cha Jin? He's one of the people who has the highest chance of becoming a true disciple among all the Saint Land disciples. If it's him, then this news should be true. The group of Saint Land disciples was shocked by the high grade of the forbidden pill Yang Wen consumed. After all, a forbidden pill that could raise a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse's saint origin by a level was not an ordinary pill. In the entire upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land, only Saint Refinement Masters at the quasi-celestial grade and above who specialized in medicine refinement would be able to refine such a pill. Senior brother Yang Wen is indeed worthy of being the son of the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect. He's actually able to take out such a precious forbidden pill. Even the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect wouldn't be able to take out such a high-grade forbidden pill. However, senior brother Yang Wen consumed it just like that. He had to consume it. If senior brother Yang Wen didn't consume the forbidden pill, he wouldn't be a match for Duan Lingtian at all. Even if Duan Lingtian were to die today, he should be proud of himself for being able to force senior brother Yang Wen to consume the forbidden pill. That's right. Even we didn't expect Duan Lingtian to be so strong that he's able to force senior brother Yang Wen to consume the forbidden pill. The Saint Land disciples in the spectator seats could not help but exclaim in awe at Duan Lingtian's unexpected strength. Ha 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 ha. At this moment, a burst of unbridled laughter suddenly resonated in the air. It was the laughter of Yang Wen, who had become much stronger after consuming the forbidden pill. Yang Wen's laughter was filled with excitement and agitation, as if he had encountered a great joyous occasion. Has this Yang Wen gone mad? Duan Lingtian frowned. He did not expect Yang Wen to suddenly laugh. After all, he did not know what was going on. After all, after Yang Wen consumed the forbidden pill, he looked as though he wanted to kill Duan Lingtian. However, at this moment, he seemed to have encountered a joyous occasion. What's going on? At this moment, Duan Lingtian was not the only one who felt that something was amiss with Yang Wen. Even the other people present on the scene were confused. What's Yang Wen doing? Even Niezue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, could not help but frown. He did not know why Yang Wen would suddenly lose his composure and laugh. The 3 bronze flame elders from the Palace of Death had a worried expression on their faces as well. I've never heard of anyone going mad after consuming a forbidden pill. If Yang Wen has gone mad, doesn't that mean Duan Lingtian is going to win? Our contribution points are going to go down the drain then. What's going on? The three bronze flame elders looked at each other. It was obvious they were worried as well. They did not care about Yang Wen's life or death. What they cared about was the contribution points that they had bet on Yang Wen. It was not a small amount. At this moment, the three bronze flame elders were not the only ones who were worried. Even the Saint Land disciples in the spectator seats around the death arena had a worried expression on their faces. In an instant, the atmosphere at the scene became noisy. What's going on with senior brother Yang Wen? Look at him. It doesn't seem like he's lost his composure. Has he gone mad? Gone mad? How's that possible? How can someone who was fine suddenly go mad? Maybe it's because of the forbidden pill? I heard the side effects of the forbidden pill are very serious. Don't the side effects of the forbidden pill only appear after the pill's efficacy has subsided? Why would it appear at this moment? I don't know. Among the group of Saint Land disciples, many of them thought Yang Wen had gone mad. Otherwise, why would Yang Wen be laughing at such a critical moment? At this moment, Yang Wen should be using all his might to kill Duan Lingtian before the effect of the forbidden pill in his body completely subsided. In their opinion, Yang Wen was wasting his time. If this continued, the forbidden pill's efficacy would be almost depleted before he even made his move. Senior brother Yang Wen, hurry up and make your move. Why are you laughing for no reason? If you want to laugh, wait until you've killed Duan Lingtian. Hurry up and make your move. I've bet 5,000 contribution points on you. If you lose it because you've gone mad, I'll curse you 100 times a day even if you die. I'll curse you to be a beast in your next life. When the group of Saint Land disciples who had bet on Yang Wen saw Yang Wen laughing for a long time without any intention of stopping, they began to urge him. Perhaps the urging of the group of Holy Land disciples had an effect. Yang Wen's laughter soon stopped. At the same time, under the watchful eyes of the others, he shifted his gaze to Duan Lingtian and said, Duan Lingtian, I really have to thank you for forcing me to consume the forbidden pill. If I didn't consume the forbidden pill, I wouldn't have been able to successfully comprehend the descent of the Spear Emperor at such a critical moment. As soon as Yang Wen finished speaking, he shook the 100 inscriptions Saint Spear in his hand. A vast amount of energy entered the 100 inscriptions Saint Spear. When the 100 inscriptions Saint Spear was shrouded by his energy, he could not help but narrow his eyes before he opened them again. Boom! 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 As soon as Yang Wen opened his eyes, the vast energy from his body seemed to have transformed into an indiscriminate shockwave that swept out in all directions. Under the watchful eyes of the others, a silhouette that resembled a towering mountain appeared and shrouded Yang Wen. The silhouette was clad in thick armor and looked awe-inspiring. He held a long spear that was more than 100 meters long in his hand. He stood there with the spear horizontally, emitting an oppressive aura. Upon seeing this, Duan Lingtian immediately thought of Hong Su. Previously, when he fought with Hong Su had cast a similar divine ability. It seemed to be called the Saber King manifestation. However, based on Yang Wen's words, the divine ability that he had cast seemed to be called the Descent of the Spear Emperor. This was not the main point. The main point was Duan Lingtian could clearly sense the divine ability that Yang Wen had cast was on a completely different level compared to the one Hong Su had cast. A high-grade offensive divine ability. Chapter 2003. Moreover, based on Yang Wen's words, it seemed like he had only comprehended the high-grade offensive divine ability, the Descent of the Spear Emperor, after consuming the forbidden pill. Network. Is it because I comprehended a high-grade divine ability at the last minute again? The corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched. He could not help but think of Sunda. Previously, in the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine, Sunda had successfully comprehended the Black Turtle's barrier, the most treasured divine ability in the Black Turtle Sanctum, because of Duan Lingtian's oppression. However, today, Yang Wen had also successfully comprehended a high-grade divine ability after consuming the forbidden pill under Duan Lingtian's oppression, just like Sunda. Duan Lingtian was rendered speechless. Heavens! It's really the divine ability, the descent of the Spear Emperor. I've long heard that senior brother Yang, Wen has been comprehending the high-grade offensive divine ability, the descent of the Spear Emperor. I didn't expect him to successfully comprehend it at such a critical moment. As it turns out, senior brother Yang Wen is not crazy. He's laughing so loudly, because he has successfully comprehended the descent of the Spear Emperor. I'm afraid Duan Lingtian is going to die from anger now, right? If he didn't force him, senior brother Yang Wen wouldn't have consumed the forbidden pill, let alone successfully comprehend the high-grade divine ability, the descent of the Spear Emperor. As soon as Yang Wen finished speaking and cast the high-grade offensive divine ability, the descent of the Spear Emperor, the eyes of the Saintland disciples who thought Yang Wen had gone mad lit up immediately. It was as though they had regained their vitality. At the same time, many Saintland disciples looked at Duan Lingtian with a hint of mockery in their eyes. Junior brother Lingtian. Sunda smiled wryly at the corner of the spectator seat. He did not expect there would be someone like him, who successfully comprehended the high-grade divine ability under Duan Lingtian's oppression. Now that Yang Wen had successfully comprehended the high-grade offensive divine ability, the descent of the Spear Emperor, it meant his strength had improved. Coupled with the forbidden pill's effect, it was undoubtedly easier for him to kill Duan Lingtian. It could be said that his junior brother Lingtian had shot himself in the foot this time. Naturally, he had shot himself in the foot. At the same time, Guanxiu, Lu Yun, and Lu Mu's expressions turned solemn. Even Lu Mu, who was extremely confident in Duan Lingtian, could not help but feel anxious at this moment. She had a worried expression on her face when she looked at Duan Lingtian again. He's mastered Duan Lingtian's effect divine ability? Duan Lingtian's emotions could not help but be filled to master Duan Lingtian's Lord Flame Duan Ling Flame profound words. Dual divine art. SSSS Dao art Duan Emperor Duan divine master. SSSS divine Duan. S. TT Duan Chen. SS? S Duan Tai. Duan Lingtian. This day next year will be the anniversary of your death. Yang Wen suddenly shouted as he took a step forward. With a flick of the 100 inscriptions Saint Spear in his hand, he charged toward Duan Lingtian with a swoosh. He had completely unleashed his spear-type martial tactic. Naturally, under everyone's watchful eyes, Yang Wen was merely making a feint. His spear was so far away from Duan Lingtian that it could not even touch Duan Lingtian. However, even if his spear could not touch Duan Lingtian, it did not mean the spear in the hands of the Spear Emperor illusory that he had consolidated with his divine ability could not touch Duan Lingtian. As Yang Wen made his move, the Spear Emperor illusory, that was as huge as a towering mountain, finally made its move. He imitated Duan Lingtian and took a step forward. Boom! The moment he took a step forward, the void trembled and the wind howled. Heaven and earth seemed to have changed color. The moment he took a step forward, it was as though he had landed on the chest of everyone present. Their hearts could not help but tremble, as though they were in the same situation. Swoosh! At the same time, the Spear Emperor illusory made its next move. It held the spear that was more than 100 meters long and swept it out. It was as though it had transformed into a gigantic WIRM, as it pounced toward Duan Lingtian, with bared fangs and brandished claws. Golden Crow's wings. At this moment, even if Duan Lingtian used the Golden Crow's wings to dodge, it would be useless. The spear that the Spear Emperor illusory had swept out had locked onto him. No matter where he hid, he would not be able to avoid it. It followed him like a shadow. Black Tortoise's protection. At this moment, the saint energy on Duan Lingtian's body surged and spread out, forming a layer of protection around his body. This layer of protection was a gigantic black tortoise's silhouette that appeared around Duan Lingtian's body, protecting Duan Lingtian completely. It was as though it could withstand all attacks. It's the black tortoise's divine ability, the black tortoise's protection. Upon seeing this, the eyes of many Saintland disciples lit up immediately. They recognized the divine ability that Duan Lingtian had cast. However, the moment the black tortoise's silhouette appeared, it was mercilessly crushed by the spear Emperor illusory. From the beginning until the end, it did not even have the strength to resist at all. Put aside the fact that Duan Lingtian had just mastered the black tortoise's barrier. His comprehension of the black tortoise's barrier was not deep enough. Even the strength that he used to support the black tortoise's barrier could not be compared to the strength that supported the spear Emperor illusory. One was the saint energy at the intermediate quintessential saint stage, while the other was the saint origin at the second form of the saint celestial stage. The two of them were not on the same level at all. After the spear Emperor illusory destroyed the defensive divine ability, the black tortoise's barrier, that Duan Lingtian had cast, it continued to charge at Duan Lingtian. It was obvious it wanted to pierce through Duan Lingtian's body with its spear and kill Duan Lingtian. Otherworldly celestial. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's body, that had merged with 4 clones, appeared again in just a blink of an eye. 5 figures passed by each other and shot out in 5 different directions. Break for me. Seeing this scene, Yongwen narrowed his eyes and shouted. At the same time, his body swayed and he made his move again. Whoosh. At the same time, the long spear in the spear Emperor illusory's hand, that was over 100 meters long, caught up with one of the Duan Lingtian and pierced through his body. Whoosh. As though a gust of wind had blown past, Duan Lingtian's body, that was pierced through, vanished into thin air. It was a clone. Whoosh. Yongwen made his move again after his first attack failed. The spear Emperor illusory also made its move and pierced Duan Lingtian's body with its spear again. Another clone. Next. After that, Yongwen's spear swept out once more. The spear Emperor phantom flashed through the sky, and it was like a god of spears had descended to the world. Just a single spear strike was capable of piercing through everything. This time, Duan Lingtian did not wait for his death. When he was locked on by Yongwen's gaze and the spear Emperor's illusory body, he immediately turned around and faced Yongwen with his sword in hand. At the same time, it revealed that he was his true body. Whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, the other 2 clones of Duan Lingtian came to a halt as well. When they regained their senses, they glared at Yongwen fiercely. All of this happened in just a blink of an eye. If one were to observe carefully, they would discover that Duan Lingtian had his back facing Niezue, the custodian of the Palace of Death. He was standing in a straight line with Niezue and Yongwen. However, it seemed as though it was intentional. This was because Duan Lingtian had repeatedly cast his movement divine ability, the Golden Crow's wings, in this direction. Currently, he had arrived at his destination. Whoosh! The spear Emperor illusory struck with its spear. In just a blink of an eye, it was already in front of Duan Lingtian. At this moment, under the watchful eyes of the others, the 300 inscriptions saint swords in the hands of Duan Lingtian's true body and his 2 clones disappeared in unison. This time, nobody thought Duan Lingtian had put the 100 inscriptions saint swords away. Whoosh! 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 As expected, as soon as the 300 inscriptions saint swords disappeared, the sound of swords whistling in the air rang again. Whoosh! As the sound of swords whistling in the air, a clear and unique sound of swords whistling in the air rang in the air like the cry of a phoenix. It was exceptionally loud and pleasing to the ears. At the same time, it gave off a cold and murderous vibe. In the next moment, under the watchful eyes of the others, the long spear in the spear Emperor illusory's hand, that was over 100 meters long, shattered before it could even touch Duan Lingtian. The spear Emperor illusory's spear shattered as well. Everyone present, including Lu Yun and the 3 bronze flame elders from the Palace of Death, who could see Duan Lingtian and Yongwen at the same time, did not know what had happened. All they heard was the sound of swords whistling in the air. They could not see anything with their naked eyes. Even Lu Yun and the 3 bronze flame elders from the Palace of Death could not see the sword shadow that caused the sound of swords whistling in the air. Spurt! As soon as the spear Emperor illusory's body was destroyed, a soft sound rang in the air. When the crowd shifted their attention to the source of the sound, they discovered that there was a bloody wound on Yang Wen's body. A bloody hole had appeared between Yang Wen's brows at some point in time. His eyes were wide open, and a smug and arrogant smile was plastered on his face. It was as though he had seen Duan Lingtian being killed by his spear. Perhaps, he did not even know what had happened until he was killed. Whoosh! At the same time, the sound of wind whistling reverberated in the air. Nie Zui, the custodian of the Palace of Death, whose line of sight was blocked by Duan Lingtian's real body, stepped into the air and moved to the side. Unfortunately, his reaction was still too slow. Yang Wen was already dead. After the 3 bronze flame elders from the Hall of Life and Death and Lu Yun made their stand, the entire Hall of Life and Death descended into a deathly silence. At this moment, even if a needle was thrown to the ground, the sound would be audible. The group of people present on the scene, including the custodian of the Hall of Life and Death, Nie Zui, was stunned. Even Nie Zui did not expect this. The 3 Palace of Death's bronze flame elders, and the true disciple Lu Yun, did not even see the sword technique Duan Lingtian cast at the end. Since Nie Zui's line of sight was blocked by Duan Lingtian's body, and he did not react in time, he did not see Duan Lingtian's final sword technique. It was also the most crucial sword technique. That sword strike had directly destroyed the attack of the Spear Emperor Phantom and destroyed it. Moreover, it had killed Yang Wen before he could even react. From the smile on Yang Wen's face when he died, one could tell he did not react in time until the moment he was killed. Based on this, one could see how fast Duan Lingtian's sword technique was. Whoosh! While the people in the Hall of Life and Death were still stunned, Duan Lingtian flew out and landed next to Yang Wen's body in the death arena. He only sighed in relief after he was certain Yang Wen's soul had been destroyed. Previously, when they were still in the Debussy subterranean, Su Jing, the young mansion master of Rising Sky Mansion, did not die even after his glabella was pierced by Duan Lingtian's sword. With this as an example, Duan Lingtian was naturally terrified. What a pity! There are so many Saint Celestial stage powerhouses here. Even if I consolidate my 10,000 swords territory, it won't be able to block their line of sight. As Duan Lingtian stood next to Yang Wen's body, he really wanted to devour Yang Wen's innate spiritual root that had yet to dissipate. However, he held himself back in the end. Devouring Yang Wen's innate spiritual root would definitely attract the attention of the few Saint Celestial stage powerhouses. The custodian of the Palace of Life and Death, Nie Zui, would definitely be able to see through him. Although the 10,000 swords territory was consolidated with the Sun Saint energy, once it was consolidated, it would form a golden fireball with a radius of 100 meters that could block other people's line of sight. However, with Duan Lingtian's current strength, the 10,000 swords territory consolidated with the Sun Saint energy could only block the line of sight of those below the Saint Celestial stage. His 10,000 swords territory would not be able to block the line of sight of those at the Saint Celestial stage or above. Otherwise, he could have cast his 10,000 swords territory to envelop Yang Wen and himself. Moreover, he could have cast the sword-wielding technique from the 3rd stage of the Sovereign Heart Sword and used the Jasper Celestial Sword to kill Yang Wen. He would not have had to waste so much effort. Duan Lingtian only had one goal in mind when he fought with Yang Wen. He wanted Nie Zui, the custodian of the Palace of Life and Death, to lower his guard. This was because he had learned from Huolao that the Jasper Celestial Sword's innate spiritual root could not be used. With his current strength, only a powerhouse at the 3rd form of the Saint Celestial stage, or above, would be able to capture the movements of the Jasper Celestial Sword when he wielded the Jasper Celestial Sword at the 3rd form of the Sovereign Heart Sword. As for Lu Yun and the other 3 bronze flame elders in the Palace of Life and Death, they might be able to capture the movement of the 100 Inscriptions Saint Sword when he used the sword-wielding technique from the 3rd stage of the Sovereign Heart Sword. However, they would not be able to capture the movement of the Jasper Celestial Sword. However, That move of the Jasper Celestial Sword has almost depleted all of my strength. At this moment, Duan Lingtian felt a sense of emptiness in his body. He had almost depleted all of his Sun Saint energy. Apart from that, the exhaustion had also caused the effect of the devouring tactic to disappear completely. At this moment, even an ordinary quintessential Saint stage martial cultivator would be able to easily kill Duan Lingtian. From the very beginning, Duan Lingtian had been setting up a trap to kill Yangwen. Naturally, this trap was not targeted at Yangwen. Instead, it was targeted at the custodian of the Palace of Life and Death, Nie Zue. He did not want Nie Zue to discover the Jasper Celestial Sword in his hand. After all, if the Jasper Celestial Sword was exposed, it would only bring disaster to him. Due to this reason, Duan Lingtian did not take Yangwen seriously from the beginning. He was merely a martial cultivator at the first form of the Saint Celestial stage. If he had fully activated the Jasper Celestial Sword with the third stage of the Sovereign Heart Sword, he would have been able to kill a powerhouse at the second form of the Saint Celestial stage. Although the Jasper Celestial Sword is the main reason why I was able to kill Yangwen today, the third stage of the Sovereign Heart Sword, the sword wielding the heart, has given me the sword wielding technique as well. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Duan Lingtian was confident that he would be able to kill Yangwen because of the third stage of the Sovereign Heart Sword, the sword wielding the heart, and the Celestial Supreme Treasure, the Jasper Celestial Sword. Elder Nie Zue. At the same time, Duan Lingtian used his remaining Sun Saint energy to soar into the air, and arrived next to the custodian of the Palace of Life and Death, Nie Zue. He handed his crystal card over. You can return this crystal card to me after deducting 400,000 contribution points from the contribution points I earned. Nie Zue only regained his senses when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. He stared at Duan Lingtian intently. He did not rush to take Duan Lingtian's crystal card, nor did he rush to return the sun shooting bow to Duan Lingtian. Instead, he asked Duan Lingtian meaningfully, Duan Lingtian, don't tell me you intentionally avoided me when you executed your last move? It was no wonder Nie Zue thought that way. Duan Lingtian had fought with Yangwen for a long time. In the beginning, Nie Zue's vision was not obstructed at all. However, at the critical moment, Duan Lingtian's body blocked his vision, so he did not see how Duan Lingtian executed his last move. Nie Zue felt it was too much of a coincidence. Elder Nie Zue, what do you mean by that? I intentionally avoided you when I executed my last move? Why would you say that? Although Duan Lingtian was shocked by Nie Zue's speculation, a confused expression appeared on his face. He could not see any flaws in his words. Nie Zue stared at Duan Lingtian intently, trying to find a flaw in Duan Lingtian's expression. Chapter 2005. The odds are 1-7. You bet 200,000 contribution points on yourself. In other words, you'll get 1.4 million contribution points back. After deducting your capital, you'll make a net profit of 1.2 million contribution points. After Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, took the crystal card from Duan Lingtian, he casually tossed the crystal card to the Bronze Flame Elder, who was in charge of the bet. Then, he looked at Duan Lingtian deeply. Even if you return me 400,000 contribution points, you'll still make a net profit of 1 million contribution points today. In the history of Zoroastrianism, I'm afraid you're the first Saint Land disciple to earn 1 million contribution points in a day. When Nie Zue reached the end of his sentence, he could not help but sigh emotionally. Everyone, please search for the most complete version. Thank you. It's all thanks to Elder Nie Zue for lending me the contribution points. Otherwise, let alone 1 million contribution points, I might not even be able to earn 10,000 contribution points. For this reason, I still have to thank you, Elder Nie Zue. Duan Lingtian smiled modestly. You don't have to thank me. Nie Zue shook his head. If you didn't place the bow with me as collateral, I wouldn't have given you 200,000 contribution points. However, I didn't expect you'd actually kill Yangwen and become the biggest winner today. As soon as Nie Zue finished speaking, He looked at Duan Lingtian with a complicated expression in his eyes. When Duan Lingtian came to him as collateral for the bow, Duan Lingtian was certain he was confident. He could vaguely sense Duan Lingtian's confidence, but he did not take it to heart. From the looks of it, perhaps Duan Lingtian knew he would definitely win from the beginning. At the same time, the 3 Palace of Death Bronze Flame Elders, who were the first to regain their senses, had a grave expression on their faces. Most of the Saint Land disciples present on the scene had a grave expression on their faces as well. Many Saint Land disciples clenched their fists with a tense expression on their faces. It was as though their eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. 3,000 contribution points. My 3,000 contribution points are gone just like that? A skinny Saint Land disciple slumped on the spectator seat. His eyes were lifeless, and it was as though he had nothing to live for. It's only 3,000 contribution points. Why are you shouting? I've lost 9,000 contribution points. That's all of my assets. Damn it! Damn it! A burly Holy Land disciple roared in a low voice. At the same time, he shifted his gaze to the corpse lying on the death arena and spat on the ground. True disciple? A Saint Celestial stage powerhouse? He was actually killed by an ordinary elite disciple. Trash! Trash! As soon as the Saint Land's disciple cursed at Yang Wen's corpse, it was as though a fuse had been lit. The Saint Land's disciple who had bet on Yang Wen was furious. How shameful! A true disciple died in the hands of an ordinary elite disciple. In the history of our Zoroastrianism, there has never been such a piece of trash. Not only has there never been such a waste in the history of Zoroastrianism, but there has also never been such a waste in the history of the other 2 great religions. The son of the Northern Plethora sect's 5th elder. What a disgrace to his father. 2 brothers died in the hands of Duan Lingtian one after another. I can't help but be convinced. If the Northern Plethora sect's 5th elder Yang Chong finds out that his eldest son is so useless, I'm afraid he'll be so angry that he'll throw up 3 liters of blood, right? Yang Wen, you're trash. Trash. You caused me to lose so many contribution points. Why don't you just die? The group of Saint Land's disciples exploded. It was as though a flash flood had erupted. All sorts of humiliating words were spat out from the mouths of the Saint Land's disciples. They did not care about the dead at all, as they cursed Yang Wen to vent the anger and dissatisfaction in their hearts. Duan Lingtian actually won? There were also a few Saint Land's disciples who had bet some contribution points on Duan Lingtian. When they regained their senses, excitement could be seen on their faces. If I knew Duan Lingtian would win, I would have bet more on him. All right, don't be greedy. It's already good enough that we didn't lose like the others. Didn't you see how many people wanted to tear Yang Wen into pieces? These people must have lost a lot of contribution points. As the few Saint Land's disciples whispered among themselves, they went to look for the Bronze Flame Elders in the Palace of Death to collect their contribution points. Junior brother Lingtian, congratulations. Sunda flew up to Duan Lingtian and congratulated Duan Lingtian. Senior brother Sunda, go and collect your contribution points. Duan Lingtian smiled. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Sunda felt a little awkward. In fact, the reason he had bet on Duan Lingtian was because he wanted to repay the favor he owed Duan Lingtian. He had even planned to squander the 100 contribution points. However, he did not expect Duan Lingtian would actually kill Yang Wen and obtain the final victory. In other words, he had earned 600 contribution points out of nowhere. Senior brother Lingtian, congratulations. At the same time, Guan Xiu also came to congratulate Duan Lingtian. At this moment, his face was glowing as though he had encountered a joyous occasion. I didn't disappoint you after all. Duan Lingtian revealed a friendly smile when he faced Guan Xiu. Go and collect your contribution points. You've earned a lot. It's all thanks to senior brother Lingtian. Guan Xiu smiled. He was happy not only because he had earned more than 20,000 contribution points, but it was also because those who had doubted him earlier were looking at him with envy and jealousy. Previously, he had bet 3,500 contribution points on Duan Lingtian. Many people had doubted him, and some of them had even said nasty things about him. However, Now that Duan Lingtian had killed Yang Wen, those people had fallen silent. At this moment he felt extremely proud. Duan Lingtian. At the same time, Nie Zue, the custodian of the Palace of Death, who had just received a crystal card from a bronze flame elder in the Palace of Death, raised his hand and passed the crystal card to Duan Lingtian. There's 1 million contribution points here. It's your reward for winning the bet today. Thank you, Elder Nie Zue. Duan Lingtian thanked Nie Zue as he received the crystal card. After receiving the crystal card, his gaze shifted to the crystal card. As he infused the Sun Saint energy into it, the crystal card showed its balance. 1 million contribution points. To a Saint Land disciple like him, who had just entered the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism, 1 million contribution points was undoubtedly a huge fortune. 1 million contribution points. Duan Lingtian actually earned 1 million contribution points. When Duan Lingtian received the crystal card, many Saint Land disciples shifted their gazes to Duan Lingtian. Their gazes were filled with envy and jealousy. 1 million contribution points. Those are the contribution points that originally belonged to us. Many Saint Land disciples felt as though their hearts were bleeding. Their contribution points had now become someone else's possession. This made them feel displeased and helpless at the same time. After all, the other party did not snatch their contribution points. Instead, he had won their contribution points fair and square. In the beginning, they had the opportunity to bet on Duan Lingtian. However, since they did not think highly of Duan Lingtian, they had missed the opportunity to earn a huge sum of contribution points. It's all Yang Wen's fault. It's all Yang Wen's fault. Soon after, most of the Saint Land disciples shifted their gazes to Yang Wen's corpse and began to curse again. In their opinion, Duan Lingtian was the cause of this. They had lost so many contribution points because of Yang Wen's death. Junior brother Lingtian. Duan Lingtian had just put on a brand new Saint Land disciple's uniform and completely concealed the characteristics of a 9-clawed dragon warrior when a voice resonated in the air. He immediately lifted his head and looked in the direction of the voice. With just a glance, Duan Lingtian saw Lu Mu flying in the air from afar. In just a blink of an eye, he had arrived in front of him. Senior brother Lu Mu. Duan Lingtian greeted Lu Mu with a smile. He glanced at Lu Yun, who was standing next to Lu Mu, and nodded his head in a friendly manner. Thank you. Currently, Lu Yun no longer had the arrogance he had when he first arrived in front of Duan Lingtian. He took the initiative to thank Duan Lingtian. The reason for his gratitude was, naturally, because Duan Lingtian had allowed him to earn a huge sum of money. Lu Yun's change in attitude was due to the strength Duan Lingtian had displayed earlier. When he first arrived at the Palace of Death, he did not think highly of Duan Lingtian, even though his cousin had asked him to bet on Duan Lingtian. He did not think Duan Lingtian would be a match for Yang Wen. However, Duan Lingtian's strength had completely shocked him, especially the sword technique that Duan Lingtian executed at the end. Even he could not catch a trace of it. Naturally, he knew what this meant. This meant if Duan Lingtian wanted to kill him, a martial cultivator at the second form of the Saint Celestial stage, he would not be able to defend himself at all. He was not confident he would be able to withstand Duan Lingtian's sword technique that killed Yang Wen. For this reason, Lu Yun's attitude toward Duan Lingtian had changed drastically. I bet 100,000 contribution points and earned 600,000 contribution points. Lu Yun looked at Duan Lingtian and said, "Give me your crystal card, and I'll transfer 300,000 contribution points to you as a thank you gift." As the saying went, one would not slap a smiling face. Moreover, Lu Yun was Lu Mu's cousin, so Duan Lingtian only smiled politely. "Senior brother Lu Yun, you deserve it. There's no need to give it to me. If you must thank someone, you should thank senior brother Lu Mu. I think if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have bet on me." When Duan Lingtian finished speaking, he looked at Lu Mu in a timely manner. "Don't worry. I'll give half of the remaining 300,000 contribution points to Brother Mu. The thank you gift won't affect this," Lu Yun said again. Upon hearing Lu Yun's words, Duan Lingtian's impression of him improved. However, he still refused Lu Yun's kindness. Senior brother Lu Yun, I've already earned 1 million contribution points today. These 300,000 contribution points don't mean much to me. How about this? Of the 600,000 contribution points you earned, you'll keep 300,000. The remaining 300,000 contribution points will be given to senior brother Lu Mu. What do you think? In the end, Duan Lingtian suggested to Lu Yun. Lu Yun had no choice but to do as Duan Lingtian said when he saw how insistent Duan Lingtian was. Chapter 2006. No matter what, Duan Lingtian was the biggest winner of the death duel in the Palace of Death today. Not only did he kill Yang Wen, but he had also earned 1 million contribution points. Under the watchful eyes of the Saint Lan disciples, Duan Lingtian did not forget to take the spatial ring from Yang Wen's body before leaving the Palace of Death with the Lu brothers. When Duan Lingtian took the lead and left, many Saint Lan disciples followed suit. However, the expressions of these Saint Lan disciples were extremely grave. How could it be? These Saint Lan disciples had more or less placed their bets on Yang Wen. However, Yang Wen was killed by Duan Lingtian in the end. This meant their bets had gone down the drain. Senior brother Lu Yun, what can I exchange my contribution points for in the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism? Duan Lingtian asked curiously, as he looked at Lu Yun after they left the Palace of Death. There are too many things that can be exchanged with contribution points. Let's go. I'll bring you to the various palaces in the central square, where you can spend your contribution points. Lu Yun's attitude toward Duan Lingtian had changed drastically when he realized Duan Lingtian's strength was not inferior to his. Now that he heard Duan Lingtian's question, he was naturally very enthusiastic. All right. Duan Lingtian nodded. He wanted to know more about the functions of the palaces in the central square as well. Under Lu Yun's lead and Lu Mu's accompaniment, Duan Lingtian shuttled through the palaces in the central square. Some of the palaces only charged contribution points for medicinal pills and did not charge saint stones. In the palaces that sold medicinal pills, not only were there all kinds of medicinal pills that aided one's cultivation, but there were also many healing medicinal pills. There were even many forbidden medicinal pills. Naturally, the contribution points required to purchase forbidden medicinal pills were extremely high as well. In particular, there were only a few high-grade forbidden medicinal pills. They were priced at several hundreds of thousands of contribution points. These forbidden pills are at the same grade as the forbidden pills Yang Wen consumed earlier. They can greatly increase the saint origin of those below the 4th level Saint Celestial stage for a short period of time. Only Saint Refinement Masters at the Quasi-Celestial grade and above who specialize in medicine refinement Dao can refine such forbidden pills. Lu Yun explained, a few 100,000 contribution points. When Duan Lingtian heard this, he was naturally shocked as well. At the same time, he could not help but sigh. It seems like the Northern Plethora sect's 5th elder, Yang Chong, really dotes on his eldest son Yang Wen. Of course I love you, Lu Yun said with certainty. It was obvious that he knew a lot about this matter. In the past, I heard that the Northern Plethora sect's 5th elder, Yang Chong, has 2 sons. His eldest son's innate talent far surpasses his youngest son. Due to this reason, he has high expectations for his eldest son. It's said that his eldest son has been sent to one of the 3 great sects. I only found out today that he sent his eldest son to the Zoroastrianism. He's Yang Wen, the true disciple of the Saint Land of Zoroastrianism. Lu Yun continued to say, due to this reason, it's not strange for Yang Chong to give Yang Wen such a forbidden pill to protect himself. Junior brother Ling Tian, I heard that after you killed Yang Wu, the youngest son of the Northern Plethora sect's 5th elder, Yang Chong personally went to the Black Turtle Sanctum to look for you, and even threatened you with your family? Lu Mu looked at Duan Lingtian and asked curiously, is that true? After all, it was just a rumor, so he was not too sure. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded. His eyes flashed coldly. In other words, apart from the fact that Yang Wen took the initiative to provoke me, I killed Yang Wen because of Yang Chong's threat to me that day. Didn't he threaten me with my family? Then I'll kill his son. When Duan Ling Tian reached the end of his sentence, he recalled the time when Yang Chong used his family to threaten him. He could not help but emit waves of killing intent that caused the temperature in the surroundings to drop by a few degrees. He deserves to die. However, I'm afraid that Yang Wen would never have dreamed that junior brother Ling Tian could actually kill him. Lu Mu said, "If he knew that I could kill him, why would he sign a life and death contract with me?" Duan Ling Tian smiled faintly. It could be said that the main reason why he was able to kill Yang Wen today was because Yang Wen was too conceited and thought that he was inferior to him. Immediately after, Duan Ling Tian did not continue this topic. Instead, he looked at Lu Yun and said, "Senior brother Lu Yun, let's take a look elsewhere." After leaving the palace that sold medicinal pills, Lu Yun brought Duan Ling Tian and Lu Mu to the palace that sold sacred artifacts. When they arrived at the palace that sold sacred artifacts, Duan Ling Tian learned that the sacred artifacts were all sacred artifacts. 100 inscription saint weapon was worth tens of thousands of contribution points in the saint land of Zoroastrianism. Not only that, but Duan Ling Tian had also heard that one could even buy 1,000 inscription saint weapon here. Naturally, the 1,000 inscription saint weapon was not placed here. Instead, it was kept by the vice sect leader, who was in charge of the various palaces around the central square. As long as one could afford it, the vice sect leader would personally deliver the 1,000 inscription saint weapon to one. "What's the price of 1,000 inscription saint weapon?" Duan Ling Tian asked curiously. 10 million contribution points. Lu Yun's answer stunned Duan Ling Tian. Initially, he thought he was rich since he had 1 million contribution points. It did not cross his mind that he only had 1/10 of the price of 1,000 inscription saint weapon. Every 1,000 inscription saint weapon is the work of a quasi-celestial grade saint inscription master in the Dao martial saint land. Moreover, the number of quasi-celestial grade saint inscription masters in the Dao martial saint land is much lesser than quasi-celestial grade saint inscription masters. This is the reason why 1,000 inscription saint weapon is so valuable. Lu Yun explained when he saw Duan Ling Tian's surprise. Duan Ling Tian finally understood. A quasi-celestial grade saint inscription master. Come to think of it, I've almost forgotten about the strange inscription Dao I obtained previously. Perhaps I can continue to study the saint inscription art, as long as it doesn't affect my cultivation. Chapter 2007. Originally, Duan Ling Tian was shocked when he heard Lu Yun mention the existence of 10,000 inscriptions, saint weapons in the martial saint land. After all, in the saint land of Zoroastrianism, if 1,000 inscription saint weapon was worth 10 million contribution points, how many contribution points would a 10,000 inscription saint weapon be worth? When Duan Ling Tian heard Lu Yun's words, it was as though he was struck by lightning. He did not regain his senses for a long time. 10,000 inscription saint weapons are the level saint weapons on the 10 great saint weapons ranking. Duan Ling Tian was dumbfounded. He was truly dumbfounded. No matter how he thought about it, it did not cross his mind. The 10 level saint weapons on the 10 great saint weapons ranking were the legendary 10,000 inscription saint weapons. Among the 10 level saint weapons on the 10 great saint weapons ranking, he had never come into contact with the other 9. However, the Devil Seal tablet had been with him for a long time. Due to this reason, he knew the Devil Seal tablet very well. Apart from the Devil Seal tablet's special ability, it did not seem to have many other uses. Its ability to amplify one's strength was not even comparable to an ordinary saint weapon. After listening to Lu Yun's explanation, Duan Ling Tian realized this was the uniqueness of a 10,000 inscription saint weapon. 10,000 inscription saint weapons were different from 1,000 inscription saint weapons, 100 inscription saint weapons, and 10 inscription saint weapons. The more saint inscriptions were inscribed on the saint inscriptions, the stronger the amplification would be. It would allow the person who possessed the saint inscriptions to unleash a more powerful attack. However, the former did not focus solely on amplifying one's strength. Duan Ling Tian knew this very well since the Devil Seal tablet itself was not a saint weapon that focused solely on amplifying one's strength. I can't believe the level saint weapons on the 10 great saint weapons ranking are actually the legendary 10,000 inscriptions saint weapons. Moreover, in the history of the Dao martial saint land, there's only one celestial grade saint inscription master who could inscribe a 10,000 inscriptions saint weapon. The moment Duan Lingtian thought of this, he could not help but feel emotional. At the same time, he realized that the celestial grade saint inscription master was a true genius. In fact, the 10,000 inscription saint weapons he left behind were passed down to this day. Moreover, they were widely acknowledged as the 10 most powerful saint weapons in the Dao martial saint land. Later on, people called them saint-level artifacts and created a list called the 10 Great Saint Artifact ranking for these 10 saint-level artifacts. The 10 Great Saint Weapons ranking represented the 10 most powerful saint weapons in the Dao martial saint land. To this day, it has never been surpassed. Of course, Duan Lingtian was also clear that, regardless of whether it was his 7 treasures exquisite pagoda or the few immortal supreme treasures in it, including the Jasper immortal sword, they were all existences that could easily surpass 10 great saint artifacts. However, they were not saint artifacts. Instead, they were immortal supreme treasures, immortal artifacts. They were things that did not belong to this world. They were from the Devata realms. Therefore, there was no comparison at all. In the Dao martial saint land, the celestial grade saint inscription master, who left behind the 10 great saint weapons on the 10 great saint weapons ranking, was indeed a monstrous genius that no one had ever done before. Celestial grade saint inscription masters and celestial grade inscription brushes are legendary existences. However, some quasi-celestial grade inscription brushes can be refined by saint inscription masters who specialize in weapons refinement. Under Lu Yun's lead and Lu Mu's accompaniment, Duan Lingtian strolled around all the palaces in the central square and learned about the functions of each palace. While Duan Lingtian was strolling around the various palaces, the news of him killing Yang Wen, the true disciple in the Palace of Death, spread like wildfire in the saint land of Zoroastrianism. Not only that, but the news also spread to all the minds in the 4 symbols sanctums of Zoroastrianism. When the news spread to the Black Turtle Sanctum, the Black Turtle Sanctum was in an uproar. Senior brother Duan Lingtian has only been in the saint land for slightly over 10 days. And he has already killed a true disciple? My goodness! Is this true? True disciple. He's a true disciple. He's the most outstanding disciple in the saint land of Zoroastrianism. Each of them is at the saint celestial stage or above. He's actually killed by senior brother Duan Lingtian? Chapter 2008. My goodness! How strong is senior brother Duan Lingtian? He's actually able to kill a true disciple from the saint land. More and more Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples were shocked. In their eyes, true disciples were unattainable. They were superior and looked down on the 4 symbols sanctum's disciples. However, today, someone had pulled a true disciple down from his pedestal. That person was none other than Duan Lingtian from the Black Turtle Sanctum. A true disciple doesn't necessarily have to be a saint celestial stage powerhouse. Don't forget that in Zoroastrianism, as long as a monstrous genius with an indigo innate spiritual root has broken through to the divine saint stage, he'll be able to become a true disciple. A Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple expressed his doubts. Perhaps Duan Lingtian killed this type of true disciple, and not one whose cultivation base has broken through to the saint celestial stage. Whether it's a martial cultivator, Dao cultivator, or devil cultivator, once one has broken through to the saint celestial stage, the saint energy in one's body will transform into saint origin. Even if 10 powerhouses at the peak of the quintessential saint stage join forces, there's still no match for a powerhouse at the first form of the saint celestial stage. Many Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples agreed with the words of this Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple. Indeed, I also think it's impossible for senior brother Duan Lingtian to kill a true disciple whose cultivation base has broken through to the Saint Celestial stage. You must have killed a true disciple with an indigo innate spiritual root. I think so too. Many Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples whispered among themselves. They did not think Duan Lingtian, who had just entered the Saint Land for 10 days, would be able to kill a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse. Humph. If you think that way, then you are gravely mistaken. When the group of Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples expressed their doubts, a tall Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple stepped forward and said, "As far as I know, the true disciple senior brother Duan Ling Tian killed is a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse called Yangwen." Yangwen. Many Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples frowned when they heard this name. I remember now. There's indeed someone called Yangwen among the true disciples in the Saint Land. He seems to have broken through to the Saint Celestial stage a few years ago. One of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples exclaimed, "I remember Yangwen. Speaking of which, he and I were in the same batch of disciples who entered Zoroastrianism. That's why I've been paying attention to him." Another Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple sighed and smiled wryly. Currently, he has already broken through to the Saint Celestial stage and has become a true disciple, but I'm still a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple. Soon after, a few Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples confirmed it. Yangwen is indeed a true disciple at the Saint Celestial stage. Yangwen, true disciple, a Saint Celestial stage expert. As the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples confirmed it one by one, the remaining Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples burst into an uproar. Yangwen? Isn't he the eldest son of the Northern Plethora sect's fifth elder, Yangcheng? At this moment, another Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple stepped forward and exclaimed in shock. Duan Lingtian killed him as well? The eldest son of the Northern Plethora sect's fifth elder, Yangcheng? The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples' words caused another uproar. Many Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples questioned, "Are you sure?" Of course. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple nodded confidently. I entered the Black Turtle Sanctum with Duan Lingtian. I was originally a disciple from a third-rate force near the Northern Plethora sect. I heard that the Northern Plethora sect's fifth elder had sent his eldest son, Yangwen, to the Zoroastrianism sect. As for his youngest son, Yangwu, he entered the Zoroastrianism at the same time as me. However, due to his arrogance, he was killed by Duan Lingtian for provoking Duan Lingtian. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple finished his sentence. The true disciple, Yangwen, is actually the eldest son of the Northern Plethora sect's fifth elder? Many Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples were shocked when they heard the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples' words. However, there were still some people who had doubts about the authenticity of this news. Yangwen is indeed the eldest son of the Northern Plethora sect's fifth elder, Yangcheng. At the same time, the well-informed Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple with a tall build spoke again. The moment he spoke, he confirmed the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple's words. I've also heard that the Northern Plethora sect's fifth elder has two eldest sons. His youngest son was killed by senior brother Duan Lingtian as soon as he entered the Zoroastrianism sect. As for his eldest son, I heard he was sent to one of the three great sections. I didn't expect he would be sent to Zoroastrianism. I can't believe the eldest son of the Northern Plethora sect's fifth elder is a true disciple of Zoroastrianism. Moreover, he's even a Saint Celestial stage powerhouse. What's even more unexpected is that his eldest son was also killed by senior brother Duan Lingtian. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples broke into an uproar again. All of them had an expression of shock and disbelief on their faces. If Yangcheng, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect, finds out both of his sons were killed by senior brother Duan Lingtian, I'm afraid he'll be so angry that he'll throw up blood, right? That's for sure. Karma really comes quickly. Previously, Yangcheng, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect, came looking for senior brother Duan Lingtian in a threatening manner and asked him to kill himself. When senior brother Duan Lingtian ignored him, he used senior brother Duan Lingtian's family to threaten senior brother Duan Lingtian. Now, his other son has died in the hands of senior brother Duan Lingtian. I wonder if he managed to find out about senior brother Duan Lingtian's background and find his family. If he didn't, he would have suffered a huge loss. It's said that the eldest son of Yang Chong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora sect, died in the hands of senior brother Duan Lingtian after he consumed a forbidden pill and raised his saint origin to the second form of the saint celestial stage. It was not only the Black Turtle sanctum, but the other three sanctums were also filled with similar discussions. For a time, Duan Lingtian became famous. His fame this time was completely different from his fame in the past. This time, Duan Lingtian's strength was acknowledged by everyone in the four symbol sanctums.